Our main character's name is Alistair, who with a calm expression tries to understand how he became who he is. Remembering the first day after his rebirth in the new world, he was faced with bitter disappointment because the curse of the time loop hung on him. In a world where everyone treats other people as enemies, and the main law is the law of the jungle, he had a hard time. He had to go through a huge amount of humiliation in order to achieve the highest goal, making incredible efforts. But like anything, everything has its pros and cons, and being in a time loop allowed him to have a huge amount of information and sleep with all the women in the world. The main character was able to benefit from his curse, and being outside the power of time, he was able to improve the divine eye, becoming stronger with each passing day. This power allowed him to accomplish a huge number of things, including helping a huge number of people and in particular the elder of the great clan. Knowledge and experience in battles allowed us to take revenge and get rid of the stupid traitor who always intended to harm our hero. During his life, he saw a huge number of beautiful girls, some of whom needed his help. And ultimately, one day, the suffering and torment of our protagonist ended, giving him the opportunity to live a full life. Our hero sees in front of him a huge golden sphere emitting a colossal amount of energy. This sphere is called the Arctogii star system. He also notices 4 huge stone statues protecting this cloud of energy from outsiders. The main character rushes forward without the slightest worry that he might die in battle with these guards. One of the stone guards delivers a powerful blow with a sledgehammer, cutting through the air and making it red hot. The main character, using his physical strength and acquired skills, easily dodges such clumsy attempts to hit him. In a few moments he soars into the air, ending up directly above the heads of the stone guards guarding the sphere. Alistair begins to absorb energy. His body begins to exude a red aura containing unimaginable power. He makes a simple wave of 2 fingers of his hand and with one attack cuts all of the guards standing around him in half, cutting time and space in his path. The main character understands that this is not the only level of defense for the sphere of magic and prepares for the next attack. Great warriors lined up in one row begin to appear in front of him, showing with all their appearance that they have gone through a huge number of battles. At the same second, a portal opens from which various demons and spirits of past centuries begin to emerge. They say that the main character is incredibly brave and stupid since he dared to invade the land of magic and immediately began to attack. The protagonist understands that the phantom souls of the greatest warriors in history have gathered before him, but even they cannot entertain him. After a moment, he begins to move from one enemy to another, inflicting countless blows on them and leaving not the slightest chance of victory. Their battle ends very quickly and Alistair stands in a cloud of dust, with the battlefield stretching behind him. He looks at the sphere of magic around which a huge number of chains are hovering, asking her if this is your new image. Inside the sphere is a stately man with white tousled hair, who is Emperor Sumer. Looking around at what is happening around him, the Emperor asks the main character who caused all this unrest. Alistair calls his name and asks for forgiveness for disturbing His Majesty's rest, but he urgently needed to meet with him. The Emperor turns out to be quite surprised that his subordinates were able to deal with him so easily and decides to personally test what our protagonist is capable of. Sumer concentrates a huge amount of magical energy in his hand and then attacks the main character with palmistry. The main character doesn't even think about running away from the Emperor's blow, saying that he has incredible strength, and he is very impressed by this. The Sumer's face shows the incorruptible shock that an ordinary mortal does not shudder before his power and does not try to avoid the attack. Alistair dispels the Emperor's attack with a slight movement of his hand and decides to tell him who he really is. The main character recalls the earthly world familiar to us and how he was an ordinary student reflecting on his future life. One day he was late for an important event regarding final exams and, sitting on his bicycle, tried to make it in time for it to start. Not noticing the red traffic light, he jumped out onto the roadway, along which a truck was driving towards him at great speed. These memories associated with the unfortunate incident were the last in his life, and watching the endless darkness before his eyes, he could not imagine that he would be reborn in another world. The main character found himself in an unfamiliar body in a world unfamiliar to him, trying to understand what happened to him. After a while, he found out that he was in the lands of the Hong continents, and more specifically, in the territory of the Wang Sect. The protagonist was not tormented for long about his new life, and he decided to find out as soon as possible who he was and where he could get help from local residents. As it turned out, the main law in the New World was the law of the jungle, and if you were weaker than someone else, it was impossible to get help. Moving in an unknown direction, Alistair stumbles upon a defenseless girl lying on the ground and asking for help. He sees an incomprehensible man in a yellow robe who attacked the beauty with the desire to violate her and commit lewdness. A sense of justice at this moment forced our hero to immediately order him to take his dirty hands off the innocent girl. The mysterious stranger, without thinking twice, immediately rushed towards the main character, realizing his superiority in strength. The man thrust a dagger into our hero's chest, finally saying that it was a mistake to challenge his master's son. The main character turned out to be incredibly weak and dying once again. He could not believe that immediately after being reborn in another world he would die again. Once again observing the endless emptiness before his eyes and trying to scream with all his might, he wakes up in the same place after his rebirth. Alistair quickly realized that every time he died or fell asleep, his day started over and he found himself in a time loop. He decided that in a world where there are a huge number of outstanding people, he should not remain in the background, and he went in search of power and strength. The world in which he was reborn had a huge number of ways to move, thanks to which in a matter of minutes you could find yourself on the other side of the earth. The main character began to wander every day, visiting more and more new places, trying to survive and improving his skills. Sometimes, his wanderings took him to mythical lands where it seemed that every centimeter of the soil was saturated with magic, which was about to flare up and tear him apart. At some points, his disagreements with the inhabitants of this world drove him into extremely uncomfortable situations from which it was difficult to find a way out. During the first 10,000 years of his travels, Alistair walked around every inch of this world and learned the secrets of all families and clans. The main character was reborn in this world precisely at the moment when the era of the Emperor's reign ended and the tribal feuds of the ruling clans became increasingly worse. Over the years spent in the time loop, the main character found out what powers the locals have, and for the most part they are chasing an increase in the amount of spiritual fusion, not paying attention to the rest. Due to his time loop curse, Alistair could not improve the amount of spiritual fusion in his body, but he could train his warrior embodiment and divine eye. The simplest thing in this matter was the improvement of the divine eye, because its power grew and became greater with each passing day, of which there were thousands. After a measly 50,000 years, the main character's strength was enough to cut mountains with the movement of 2 fingers. A little later, and having lived for 70,000 years, the protagonist managed to share a bed with every beauty of this world. But one day, at the moment of his 100,000th birthday, he found himself next to a princess who was talking about his exploits. The girl did not believe that the main character was already more than 100,000 years old, and that during this time he was able to defeat countless enemies. She says that she doesn't believe in this made-up nonsense, and is 100% sure that it was he who poisoned her. Alistair extends his hand to her, assuring her that he is not with those who poisoned her, and asks her to follow him. The girl immediately turns around, trying to go in the opposite direction and ordering him not to even try to follow her. The main character, rolling his eyes, explains that, continuing to walk forward, in 10 seconds the girl will see the light of the torch and those who wanted to kidnap her, which the beauty, for obvious reasons, is not going to believe. Continuing to walk forward exactly after the allotted time, she sees 2 robbers in front of her with a burning torch in their hand. Shocked by what she saw, the girl cannot believe that everything that was said earlier to our main characters turned out to be true. She immediately begins to run away from the robbers towards our protagonist, asking him for help and protection. Hiding behind his back, the girl expresses her trust in him and asks him to deal with the attackers, in response receiving that everything will end in a few seconds. Having dealt with the robbers who want to kidnap the girl, the main character leads her deep into the dark forest. Making his way further and further, he asks to follow him, pointing towards a secret passage in the trunk of a huge tree. The girl expresses her fears about her safety and why the main character is sure that there is a secret passage there, to which he replies that he has done this countless times already. After which the princess, with confidence burning in her eyes, promises that if something happens to her, the main character's head will be cut off. Having gone deeper into the tree, Alistair turns a handle sticking out of the wall in the shape of the head of a toothy demon. This action opens that very secret passage and 3 silhouettes appear in front of our heroes from a cloud of dust and fog. We see before us the same man who tried to harass the girl on the very first day of Alistair's stay in this world. These strangers turn out to be Balder, the son of one of the elders of the Wang sect located nearby. The girl immediately starts screaming at the stranger who appeared out of nowhere, saying that it was he who gave her the poison. Balder explains that it was not poison, but an aphrodisiac after which she will not be able to resist and will do whatever he orders. At the same time, he glances at our hero, realizing that he is incredibly weak because his level of spiritual fusion is at the lowest level. In a world where only force rules, the level of a person's skills is determined by the boundaries that he was able to overcome, starting from the lowest level and ending with the highest level. As mentioned earlier, all people are chasing an increase in spiritual fusion, when in fact the divine eye and warrior incarnation are an indicator of strength. I don't sense large reserves of spiritual fusion in our main character. He orders his subordinates to kill him and bring him a girl. 2 warriors dressed like ninjas rush towards Alistair, drawing their terribly sharp katanas. Having pulled out a knife from the pocket of his robe, the main character with a slight movement reflects their blows, simultaneously inflicting many injuries on them. Looking at the main Balder, the hero agrees that he is at the lowest level of the line, but nevertheless he had the strength to kill his subordinates like little animals. The elder's son clearly does not like this treatment, and he orders him to immediately apologize and stop talking to him like that. Alistair, wiping the blade of his dagger, says that even though Balder is on a higher level, he should be more respectful towards those who are on a lower level. Balder, whose face simultaneously reads fear and a feeling of rage, asks who the main character is, that he knows how strong the son of the elder himself is. The protagonist with a calm look and burning eyes explains that these are the words of his father, and what his son did this evening is enough to kill him. At the same moment, the main character very quickly gets closer to his opponent and inflicts a powerful slap on him in the face. Due to the difference in strength, even such a weak blow is enough to turn Balder's face into a crumpled sheet of paper with veins protruding from it. Having flown several meters back, he is at a loss as to who the main character really is and allows himself to treat him this way. Looking at his opponent, Alistair thinks about how pitiful the son of Sect Elder Wang is, who made a deal with the evil fort. Kneeling in front of the main character, Balder asks for forgiveness, begging him to be left alive and not killed. The protagonist throws a dagger at Balder's feet, saying that an animal like him should cut off its own paw as a sign of punishment. His face immediately begins to exude primitive horror and a plea for help, while simultaneously asking the main character for mercy and mercy. Alistair, with a straight face, says that if he doesn't do it himself, he'll have to cut off not 1, but 2 of his hands. A few seconds later, a piercing scream is heard throughout the entire area, causing the bird sitting on the neighboring trees to fly away. Covered in tears and drool oozing from his mouth, Balder asks if this is enough while bleeding. After the main character says to get away, Balder runs away, leaving only a vile bloody trail behind him. The girl standing behind the main character all this time thanks him for her salvation and asks him to take her home. Alistair says he helped her get rid of the persecution, but the aphrodisiac in her blood is still active and needs to be neutralized. The girl's face shows embarrassment, and she asks how exactly he is going to neutralize the poison. After some time, the main character summons a huge phoenix with blue plumage and soars into the air with the princess. Meanwhile, the princess does not understand how an ordinary person at the lowest level is able to control the phoenix of the southern sea, since this requires at least 3 years of training. Alistair explains that he has lived here for 100,000 years and, like no one else, knows everything about everything, including how to intimidate the elder's son and how to control the phoenix. A sweet and embarrassed girl asks if the main character really wants to neutralize the aphrodisiac in her blood because she is betrothed to the 7th demon emperor. Alistair says that he is well aware of who the emperor's demon is and that he is the strongest on the entire continent. He asks her not to worry because he will be fine, and now they have little time left, which is only enough for 5 times. The blushing girl tries to pretend that she doesn't understand what our main character is getting at, asking what 5 times we are talking about. At that very second, her body begins to tingle and shake, and the blood through her veins begins to circulate at incredible speed. Alistair begins to panic, realizing that the effect of the aphrodisiac has begun to take effect ahead of time, and asks the girl to control herself. The princess attacks the main character, saying that she cannot wait until they land and wants to start doing it right now. The next morning, the protagonist sleeps drooling and realizing that another meaningless and carefree day has begun. Before he has time to open his eyes, he pulls his hand to the side, but accidentally stumbles upon the gorgeous breasts of the girl he saved yesterday. He immediately jumps back in panic, not understanding what is happening and asking the princess how she ended up here. The girl looks at him with tear-stained eyes, calling the main character a liar, because he promised that she would return to her home in the morning. Not fully understanding what is happening, the protagonist decides to clarify what day it is today, in response to hearing the 27th of July. A few moments later, he realizes that the day in which he was stuck for 100,000 years was the 26th of July, and he finally got out of the time loop. Images of all the celestial beings, great warriors and monsters who look down on him begin to flash in his head, and he vows to destroy each of them. His thoughts are interrupted by a girl who tries to hit him, blaming him for what happened last night, and asking who will be responsible for everything. Alistair presses her to his chest, asking her not to worry, because she is the only girl he remembers during his entire stay in this world and will definitely be responsible for her. The bride of the 7th Emperor raises her tear-stained eyes to him, saying that she will definitely remember these words and hopes that all this is true. Their conversation is interrupted by a woman's scream coming from the sky and promising to punish the main character for his actions. They look up and see a girl with red hair and a sword behind her, standing on a giant phoenix. This graceful and stately beauty turns out to be one of the elders of the Wang sect, whose name is Mistletoe. Looking at her, Alistair becomes disappointed in his liberation from the curses of the time loop, because as soon as one disappears, another problem immediately appears. The elder extends his palm and begins to prepare a powerful spell called Dragon Net. The rescued girl tries to pull the main character away, warning him that if he gets caught in the net, he will never get out. The protagonist reassures her by saying that this is nothing, and with a wave of one finger of his hand he cuts the dragon net, flying towards him. At this time, Mistletoe experiences shock, not understanding how an ordinary person from the lowest level could deal with one of the most powerful binding spells. She jumps off her air transport, saying that she will definitely free the captive from the dirty hands of the kidnapper. Without giving the elder the opportunity to attack, the main character asks her if she is interested in information about where her father is. Mistletoe begins to get angry after hearing this, trying to realize who is standing in front of her and what he knows about her father. Alistair offers a deal, asking her to accompany him to the territory of the Bath Sect, after which he will tell her everything he knows. When asked by Mistletoe for what purpose he wants to get there, he says that this no longer concerns her and asks only to take him there. After some time, our heroes reach the temple of the Wang sect, in which a huge number of subordinates are training, who kneel when they see one of the elders. Alistair, accompanied by Mistletoe, moves to the main temple of the Wang sect, and apparently, she decided to accept his offer. The main character passing by the students of the sect hears how they humiliate him because he has the audacity to walk ahead of the elder and behaves like Balder. Noticing this, he turns towards Mistletoe and asks to get rid of these three talkers. One of the students grins, being 100% sure that the elder will not listen to such a commoner. At that very second, the girl draws her sword and knocks out the impudent students with a few blows. You can see red broken capillaries in the elder's eyes because she is clearly dissatisfied with the behavior of her subordinates, and orders them to immediately close their mouths. After some more time, our heroes find themselves at the shining gates of the main temple of the Wang sect. Elder Mistletoe follows the main character with his gaze, trying once again to ask why he came to the sect. Alistair turns around at her words and with a full expression of confidence says that he wants to see the head of Alana. Mistletoe is amazed by such a bold demand and says that she doubts that the sect leader will find time to meet with an ordinary person from the bottom line. Also, the main character pats the girl he saved on the head, ordering her to go home and leave everything else to him, after which he again turns to the elder, asking him to convey his words to the head of the sect, because as soon as she hears them, she will immediately agree to an audience. Alistair says that unpaired meridians merge together. The 8 points of their intersection are similar to yin and yang. When the blood boils and the bones cool, everything turns out as it should. Mistletoe immediately understands that these lines must have a hidden meaning, and the young man standing in front of her is clearly a difficult person. The elder promises to convey everything exactly as he asked and says that he will return soon. Meanwhile, the main character hears the sounds of battle coming from nearby within the temple. After looking around a little, he finds students of the sect who are training and wielding a sword. He witnesses a duel between a girl and a guy in which the lady gracefully wins. I'm trying to establish contact with the students. He asks what they do and what exactly they train in the fighting style of swordsmen. The students of the sect turned around, remembering our main character, and trying with horror not to make unnecessary movements so as not to anger him. While the men are shaking in horror for fear of being beaten by Elder Mistletoe, the girl who won the sword duel does not understand what is happening. Plucking up courage, she nevertheless decides to ask the stranger who appeared out of nowhere who he is. Alistair replies that his position and name are not as important as the fact that the girl is using the heavenly abundance sword technique incorrectly. Incorruptible surprise immediately appears on the student's face, and she is shocked at how he was able to notice the flaw in her technique. The protagonist advises the girl to leave her thoughts behind and surrender to her feelings, because only the form invested in the desire is transferred to the blade, and she must allow him to control her. The student is completely delighted with such incredible knowledge about the art of swordsmanship and asks to enlighten her even more. Alistair sits down on a small column, saying that he can answer all her questions for a little massage. The girl, with a frowning and slightly dissatisfied look, nevertheless decides to succumb to the protagonist's provocations and begins to massage his trapezium. The students of the sect observing all this are clearly unhappy and promise to teach our main character a lesson someday. They are interrupted by the returning Elder Mistletoe, who says that the head of the sect is waiting for our protagonist in the hall. Alistair waves goodbye to his new friend, promising to teach her another time. Mistletoe, having noticed her student giving the main character a massage, reprimands her for wasting her time instead of achieving level 2 in swordsmanship. The girl explains that the person she is accompanying knows the secret of the final form of the heavenly abundance technique. Mistletoe cannot believe what she heard, realizing that the stranger she met is still too young, and heavenly abundance is a secret technique that not every elder is able to comprehend. The student begins to swing her sword at a frantic speed, emitting a huge amount of energy, saying that this is exactly how this stranger taught her to move. Looking at the movement, Mistletoe cannot believe that this is possible because it is simply incredible. Meanwhile, the main character is standing in front of a huge staircase at the end of the office. The head of the sect, Wang, is sitting. A majestic and busty girl sitting on the throne wonders how the main character knows the secret of the technique of oblivion, which is passed down from generation to generation. Alistair spreads his hands to the sides, saying that he knows not only the principle of operation of the technique, but also its weak point. The head of the sect, Alana, clearly does not like this answer, and she says that the technique has been passed on for 3,000 years and cannot have any flaws. She immediately becomes covered in purple tattoos, and a huge number of terrifying snakes emerge from her body. Alana orders the stranger to answer for what purpose he came to her temple, otherwise the last moments of his life will be numbered. Alistair repels the snakes attacking him with one wave of his palm and says that he once advised her to be careful, but yesterday she got hurt while trying to perfect this spell. After his palms strike, waves of energy begin to emanate around him, and he says that if he does not provide his help, she will need 6 months to recover. In her thoughts, Alana understands that last night they really practiced at a reservoir of the highest purity, where no outsiders are allowed, but this young man somehow knows everything. Tattoos disappear from the head's face and body, and she stops attacking the main character, who continues to post information. The protagonist climbs the steps to the throne and, standing in front of Alana, says that he does not like to talk to someone looking down and understands perfectly well that the girl is now worried about 2 things. The head of the sect sees the spiritual fusion of our hero and understands that he is at the lowest level, but at the same time his energy is incredibly overwhelming. Alistair says that the first reason is the fort of evil spirits and the palace of the Chili family, who both want to lure her sect to their side, but she does not trust both. And the second reason is that Alana cannot exceed the boundary of the cycle, and the main character offers to make a deal because she can help solve both of these problems. In exchange for fulfilling all the above conditions, Alistair asks to use the reservoir of higher frequency and allow access to it. At the same time, somewhere at the other end of the Bath sect, an old gray-haired old man scolds 2 bodyguards. These bodyguards turn out to be the very subordinates of the Balder whom the main character defeated while saving the girl. They both ask for forgiveness for their actions and, on their knees, beg the master not to take their lives, which causes him to have an attack of uncontrollable rage. The old man orders them to stand up and go ahead of him to the head of the sect, promising to have mercy on them. At the same moment, his blood boils, and he launches an icy stream of energy towards these bodyguards. As soon as the icy cloud of energy reaches the target, they immediately find themselves frozen and standing absolutely motionless. A gray-haired old man, saying that useless puppies are unworthy of life, splits their bodies into small pieces of ice with a powerful blow. At the same second, his son Balder, who lost his arm, appears from around the corner and asks his father who the man he met was. The old man says that it doesn't matter to him who this guy is, but he will pay for the fact that he dared to cut off his son's hand. Balder begins to sob and drool again, begging his father to avenge his lost hand. Meanwhile, the head of the sect, Alana, agrees to make a deal with the main character, saying that she will be able to admit him to a reservoir of the highest purity. Alistair thanks her and promises to come to the pond in the evening to help her overcome her milestone. When the girl asks why they can't go there now, he turns around and looks towards the entrance of the throne room. The main character smiles and says that first of all he will need to deal with the guests who have arrived. At that same second, the gates swing open and that same gray-haired old man, Balder's father, comes inside. This gray-haired old man turns out to be another elder of the Wang sect named Howard, who says that he has heard rumors about the kidnapping of a girl who has already been saved. Alana replies that everything is true and he has nothing to worry about because the girl is safe, and the old man, meanwhile, looks at the main character, realizing that he is at the bottom line. Alistair, meanwhile, stands looking at the old man, while radiating unshakable confidence in himself and his abilities. At that very second, asking the head if this guy is really the kidnapper, Howard rushes towards him with the desire to attack. The old man accumulates in his hand the icy energy of which he recently destroyed 2 bodyguards, intending to do the same to the main character. In the blink of an eye, Alistair dodges and finds himself behind the elder, saying that he did not expect such emotions from their first meeting. Howard can't believe his eyes, trying to figure out how this guy managed to get behind him. Meanwhile, the head of the sect, with an unshakable and confident look, wonders what the reason for Howard's visit to her chambers is. The old man asks for forgiveness, explaining his behavior by saying that it is his duty as the person responsible for security in the entire sect and asks to take the main character away for interrogation. Alana explains that this is not necessary because if it weren't for Alistair, who knows what could have happened to that kidnapped girl. The head of the sect also orders that this young man be given the status of its viceroy and identical rights, and everyone in the territory of the sect is obliged to treat him with respect. Howard congratulates the main character for being able to gain such influence at such a young age in his head, without understanding where this brat came from. Finally, the head of Alana asks not to piss Howard off, at the same time informing him that Mistletoe will show him his chambers for the next couple of days. Alistair promises to be more restrained in the future, and thanks the head for its concern. After some time, he finds himself in a luxurious 2-story estate that will serve as his temporary home. He inspects the rooms, accompanied by that same swordsman apprentice, writing compliments on the local interior. The girl bends her knee and says since Mr. Governor is not busy with anything, she would like to get some advice regarding ball skills. The main character explains that he won't be able to do it today because there is one unfinished business that needs to be resolved first. Meanwhile, in a secret and gloomy dungeon, Balder accuses the main character of sharing a bed with the head of the sect, and that is why he deserves such treatment. He gets angry and wants to take revenge on our protagonist, telling his father that he can't just leave it like that. Elder Howard, as if not listening to his son, is wondering how a man with the lowest level of strength was able to dodge his blow. Balder interrupts his father's thoughts by saying that yesterday he gave the girl a love potion, and the main character probably noticed this, and took advantage of her condition. After which he puts forward the theory that the head most likely granted him this status wanting to keep everything secret. Howard thinks about everything he has heard and understands that with such evidence, he is unlikely to be able to get away with it. At that very second, their conversation is interrupted by Alistair, who appears out of nowhere and thanks them for their kind words. Elder Howard, with a smile on his face, is surprised at the courage of the protagonist, because he had the audacity to invade his domain. The main character puts the old man in his place, saying that in the 30 years he spent in the Wang sect, he achieved practically nothing and, on top of everything else, encourages the actions of his son. After which Alistair takes a blue glowing ball out of his pocket and asks if the old man needs an antidote. Howard realizes that he has the antidote to the water dragon's poison in his hands and suggests that this boy could be a messenger, and immediately falls to his knees. Realizing the gravity of the situation, he also orders his worthless son to kneel down quickly. Alistair says that by ordering Baldur's hand to be cut off, he hoped that he would wise up, but now he sees that instead of repenting, he decided to make bad plans. The old man begins to furiously beg and ask for forgiveness, saying that he and his son were wrong and asking to give him an antidote as soon as possible, because the dragon's poison is very painful and unbearable to endure. The main character gives the strange ball into the hands of the elder, who says that from this day on he will not act without his order. The elder puts a ball of antidote in his mouth, wondering why our protagonist gave it away so easily. After Howard takes the antidote, Alistair says that this pill was made by him personally and if he decides to betray him, he will die immediately. At that same second, the old man feels like a huge number of chains are wrapped around his heart, and, apparently, the guy is not joking. After which the elder bows his head again, promising to be obedient and not violate the young master's trust. Raising his head, he and his son notice that the main character has disappeared, and in his place there remains a small piece of smoke. At this time, Mrs. Alana is waiting for our hero near a reservoir of the highest purity. The main character appears, stands completely naked, covering his pelvis with a small towel, and says that the head will need to take off his clothes. Alana is outraged by this statement, asking him who he thinks he is talking to now and orders him not to be impudent. The protagonist says that the head does not interest him at all and can keep his dignity to himself because his goal is to help her surpass her current level of power. Alana agrees to fulfill the demands of the protagonist, saying that she will trust him in exposing her chic and beautiful body. Alistair stands behind the girl, asking her not to move and promising that everything will be painless. After a short pause, the main character begins to concentrate a huge amount of energy in his hand. Soon after, he redirects the flow of power into Alana's body, causing her to absorb all of this power. The girl begins to blush and moan loudly, realizing what a great power is penetrating her body and trying to control it. Having completed the ritual, Alistair says that the Oblivion technique only multiplies energy, but does not generate it, and if the head can improve it to the 9th circle, then reversion will begin. Alana wonders how long it will take her to harness energy. Alistair says that with his current level it will take 6 months, but he will become much stronger, so this period will be shortened because he knows that the Battle of the Mainland will take place soon. The Mainland Battle is a battle between the major sects of the entire continent for the right to enter Dauha. Dauha exists from the beginning of time and permeates the entire continent. Only the victorious sect has the right to enter and improve its forces in it. Alana says that hundreds of sects have settled on the mainland, 3 of which are recognized as the strongest, but the Bath sect is the weakest of the 3, and in truth, she wants to refuse to participate in the battle. The main character says that there is no time to give up and he will do his best to help the head and she will succeed, and in her eyes there is a desire to sleep with him again. He also adds that their training is over for today and tomorrow they need to meet at the same place. Trying to assess his level of power, Alistair realizes that with the help of 2 principles under his control, he was able to raise his level to a spiritual level. Returning to his chambers, the main character notices the swordswoman obediently waiting for her apprentice, who reports that a certain lady has been waiting for him for a long time. Going inside, the girl he recently saved, whose name is Zinni, immediately rushes into his arms. The main character is very happy about her appearance, and his delight knows no bounds since he did not expect to see her here. Zinnia immediately begins to describe the latest events, saying that our protagonist is incredible because he managed to achieve such a quick arrangement of the chapter itself. The girl says that Alistair looks incredibly courageous and charismatic, and in her eyes there is a desire to sleep with him again. She also adds that she is very glad that they met, and reports that lately all her thoughts have been only about our main character. Chini once again remembers that if in 2 years the 7th demon emperor calls her to marry, then she would prefer to die rather than allow this marriage to take place. The image of the powerful demon emperor pops up in the girl's head, for whom she is only one of the many brides of whom there will be several hundred. Alistair, with unshakable confidence on his face, promises to never allow this to happen because now he is responsible for her. The girl waves goodbye to him, saying that it's already late and she needs to return home, and also that that girl is a swordsman and her best friend. And smiling broadly at our protagonist, she asks him to help her with training in his free time. Their farewell is interrupted by the same apprentice swordswoman who asks her master for permission to escort the zinnias home. Left alone, Alistair says into the void that her student has left and apparently someone else will keep him company tonight. As it turns out, he turns to Elder Mistletoe, who has been hiding around the corner of the building all this time. The girl realizes that her location has been revealed and decides to show up in full growth. I remind the main character to watch his words. Seeing the elder from afar, Alistair mutters to himself that it is simply impossible to forget this. As it turns out, all this time his eyes were glued to the elder's large and incredibly lush chest. Realizing what was happening, the girl immediately covered her body with her hands, asking where exactly our protagonist was staring. Going inside his chambers, Alistair emphasizes that Mistletoe herself invited the head to settle him in her estate for the sake of information about his father. The elder says that this was done necessary in order to find out, and tried to convince him to give all the information he knew. Alistair sits on the bed asking for company, promising that at the right time he will tell everything. The girl begins to blush and feels slightly embarrassed, asking what exactly the main character is thinking about. Plucking up courage and still managing to sit next to him on the bed, the girl asks what she should do now. The Viceroy leans back completely, lying on the bed saying that he is not going to do anything with her, after which he falls asleep in a matter of seconds, leaving the elder completely alone to digest what happened. Mistletoe still tries for some time to understand for what exact purpose he called her to him, after which he also falls asleep. The next morning, the girl sleeps peacefully, drooling into the pillow tightly clutched with both hands. Opening her eyes, she sees Alistair standing in front of the window, already making further plans for the whole day. I turn to Mistletoe. The main character asks her opinion about the upcoming battle of the continent in which they will have to participate. The girl says that with the current level of the Wang sect, if he participates, then he can't count on winning. The main character praises the girl for cutting off his assessment of the situation, but is sure that they will be able to defeat the other participants, and for this he needs helpers. Alistair reports that she will be the first on his list. For a month he will train her in the skills of a swordsman, and they will also adjust the heavenly abundance. He also reports that he is just going to see the second person on the list, at the same time wondering if Mistletoe knows Casper. The girl reports that he is the seventh elder and, at the same time, a very reserved person who always acts alone and lives on a mountain where he constantly trains. Alistair says that he should go to the seventh elder asking Mistletoe to stay in the sect and save one person, and this will happen at exactly noon. The girl, slightly dissatisfied with being commanded like a small child, nevertheless agrees with the instructions. After some time, the main character, accompanied by a swordsman apprentice, moves towards the mountain where the elder is training. He explains to the girl that the elder hates it when his training is interrupted and disturbed. Turning towards the student, he asks what would happen if he forced her to fight the elder. Shocked by this offer, the swordswoman tries to refuse, saying that he is a very skilled warrior and she is no match for him. Alistair asks her not to worry, because all she will need to do is fight off the first 7 blows, and then immediately use the 10th form of heavenly abundance. The girl understands that she has no right to contradict her master and promises to do everything exactly as he said. At that very second, their conversation is interrupted by a loud scream, and the main character manages to feel that something is moving towards them at high speed. At the last moment, thanks to his physical skills and incredible reactions, he manages to push the student away, after which a huge explosion was heard behind them, from which they barely managed to dodge. The swordswoman did not even have time to understand what had happened, but if the protagonist had not managed to save her, she would have already been dead. Looking back at the place where the explosion occurred, they see a large cloud of dust and a man standing in front of them with a huge sword. The swordsman who attacked them turns out to be the 7th elder of the Wang sect, Casper, who says that this is a forbidden area and they should not have come here. Alistair interrupts her by saying that according to rumors he is the best swordsman on the entire continent, and he came to see for himself. Such words cause a sharp attack of aggression in Casper, and he asks the main character to show his skills to the fullest. The protagonist slightly cools his ardor by saying that he will have to fight not with him, but with his subordinate. The girl draws her sword, saying that her name is Darcia and she is a disciple of the 12th elder of the Wang sect, challenging Casper to a duel. The elder clearly does not like this situation, and he cannot believe that he is being forced to fight with some girl. He immediately takes off, rushing into the attack, saying that they asked for it, and there will be no mercy. His first and swift blow from the side seems incredibly powerful and crushing. Darcia manages to repel the attack, barely able to withstand all the pressure and power at the last moment, managing to get down on one knee, after which she immediately does a huge backflip trying to break the distance with the elder. Casper immediately rushes towards her, saying that since she can dodge, their duel will turn out to be very funny. He begins to shower her with a hail of blows, and the girl, with the last of her strength, manages to deflect each of them. After repelling the sixth and final attack, the girl remembers that, according to the main character, now it is her turn to attack. The elder, full of confidence, declares that the girl is clearly not a timid one, and he wants to see if she will be able to hit him at least once. After these words, Darcia immediately begins to prepare the technique of heavenly abundance, raising it to the 10th form. A huge number of ghostly blades of charged energies begin to appear around her, which begin to attack the elder. Not expecting such pressure, Casper slightly lowers his guard and one of the swords manages to scratch his cheek. Realizing what was happening, he asks the main character how exactly he was able to calculate his weakness, because the girl clearly weighted the required number of blows and was able to wound him. Alistair says that soul to soul as a single organism is the owner of the sword and its name is the same as dragon scales. The elder cannot believe his ears, asking how exactly he knows the secret of his sword. The protagonist states that he likes weapons, so he understands them well and one glance is enough for him to understand everything. Casper declares that all this is nonsense, and he cannot believe that some guy with one glance was able to identify all the weaknesses and shortcomings in his technique. In order to confirm his words, the main character picks up an ordinary twig and says that he can defeat him in one blow. Amazed by such impudence, rage begins to boil in the elder's eyes, and he asks his opponent to show his strength. At the same second, Casper thrusts his sword into the ground from which waves of energy begin to emerge, after which a huge cloud of energy appears from the ground, shaped like an electric dragon. Our protagonist grins, saying that this is exactly what he expected and so far there is nothing unique about it. Alistair makes a powerful swing of the twig in his hand and asks to see the 10th form of this technique. Out of nowhere a golden energy dragon appears, several times larger in size than the first. Casper, being in complete shock, cannot believe his eyes looking at the huge golden dragon. The elder kneels, and the main character, holding a branch near his head, asks if he admits defeat. Casper agrees that he is weak and tries to find out how exactly he learned the 10th form of this technique. The main character replies that he only improved the 7th form that the elder used and hopes that he understood exactly how, because if not, he will be very disappointed. The elder, crossing his arms, thanks Alistair for the instruction and asks him to introduce himself to who his opponent is. Before he can answer, he is interrupted by Darcia, who reports that standing in front of him is the very young man whom the head appointed as governor. Casper emphasizes that the main character is incredibly skillful at such a young age, and his knowledge of ball handling techniques is simply amazing. The protagonist reports that he is happy to share several secrets, while at the same time finding out whether the elder wants to prove himself in the Battle of the Mainland. Casper states that he considers himself the strongest among the people of the 3 main sections and in a one-on-one fight he has no equal. But since the battle is not a single fight, most likely they will lose. Alistair reports that before the battle begins, he plans to make the Wang sect stronger and also wants to find a worthy opponent for the elder. Casper is very happy with this offer and agrees to participate in the battle under the leadership of our main character. After some time, our heroes return to the main temple of the Van sect, where Mistletoe reports that she has fulfilled the request. Next to the girl stands a tall man in armor who is the 3rd elder named Lewis. The man falls to his knees and begins to thank the main character for ordering to save him from a painful death. Alistair once again thanks the mistletoe for fulfilling his request, and says that they all have more important things to do. Their conversation is interrupted by Darcia, who reports that the head is organizing a general meeting and every elder of the sect must appear in the Hall of Saints. While they are walking into the hall, Mistletoe tells Lewis that yesterday there was a skirmish between the Viceroy and Elder Howard and asks him to support the young man. Once at the meeting, the head informs her that she has received a letter from the Scarlet Sky Palace, and tomorrow morning the master of their sect will personally come for a visit. The main character puts forward the theory that all this was done in order to test the strength of the Wang sect. The first elder, named Cameron, wearing a strange, incomprehensible mask, does not agree with this statement, saying that with the current power of the Scarlet Sky, this makes no sense. The second elder, named Mason, also agrees with him. They say that the governor thinks too superficially. At this moment, their reasoning is interrupted by Howard making a powerful strike with his palm on the table, saying that, in his opinion, there is a grain of truth in Alistair's words. The thought slips into the thoughts of the first and second elders that it is very strange that their most venerable colleague suddenly took the side of the youth. This behavior of Howard seems strange to the head, Alana, who begins to suspect the main character of illegal actions. Nevertheless, she agrees with the Viceroy, but still wonders if a master from another sect still comes, what they should do. The protagonist offers to kill a couple of people from their sect to show who is in charge. He is immediately interrupted by the fifth elder, Michael, who says that one cannot act in this way, because they are much stronger and with such actions they can ruin their existence. The fourth elder of the Wang sect, Melvin, agrees with him, saying that he is also against such decisions. Howard again decides to support the governor's proposal, saying that it is excellent and needs to be struck first. Considering everything that Alistair said, Elder Casper, after waiting a sufficient amount of time, says that he also approves of such actions. This answer causes sharp surprise to all the elders, because before, Casper practically did not speak and sat silently at all councils. Deciding to stay away, Mistletoe and Lewis also decide to approve our protagonist's proposal. Hearing the voices of everyone present, the head decides to ask the governor how they are going to defeat the enemies if a battle begins. The main character asks the head not to worry and promises that tomorrow they will be able to surpass them, offering to finish the meeting for today because he is a little tired. Alana agrees with the protagonist's decision, saying that the meeting is over while trying to understand why most of the elders supported him. Before everyone had time to leave, Howard catches up with Alistair, asking if he did everything well and is going to accept a new task. The main character orders the old man to kill one person this evening, and it is very important that he dies in one blow. The main character whispers in the elder's ear what exactly needs to be done to defeat the enemy with just one blow. Then he adds that if everything is done as he said, nothing will threaten him. The old man promises to carry out the instructions exactly as the young master told him and asks permission to take his leave. After a few more seconds, Elder Lewis catches up with Alistair, who once again thanks him for his salvation. The protagonist thanks the elder, saying that he is very polite and his skills will definitely be useful to them during the Battle of the Mainland. Lewis promises to give his best, but unfortunately, this will be impossible because his 5th class spear was broken. Alistair says that the elder doesn't have to worry about this, because soon he will give you a new spear of the 9th category. Lewis is immediately incredibly surprised, saying that in their sect there are only angular weapons of this level and for him it would be a great honor. Finally, the main character orders the elder to take care of his wounds, and when the opportunity presents itself, he will definitely get his weapon. After the end of the conversation, Alistair finally wants to rest, and says that it's time to move on to the most interesting part. In the evening of the same day, he and the head again perform the ritual near a reservoir of the highest purity. The main character decides to slightly ingratiate himself with Alana by deciding to ask why Howard is suddenly so supportive and supported him at the Council of Elders. The girl states that doubts have been creeping into her for a long time, because lately in the Van sect everyone seems to be dancing to the tune of our main character. Alistair grins, pretending that he has nothing to do with this and this is all a coincidence, while asking whether everyone really treats him well. Alana immediately blushes and begins to feel embarrassed, covering her naked body with her hands and saying that she remains impenetrable. The protagonist understands perfectly well the fears of the head, but asks her to calm down because he arrived in their sect in order to help resolve pressing issues. He extends his hand to the side, inviting the head to come closer because he wants to tell her a little secret. The head leans in and he whispers in her ear that Elder Howard is really a pawn of the evil fort, after which he points his finger towards the forest, saying that it is nearby and they should take a walk and look at it. The girl has no choice but to agree with Alistair, and she asks him to wait a minute because she needs to get dressed. After some time, they move towards the forest where the elder is supposed to be. They watch as Howard beats forth Elder Melvin with all his might. He lies on the ground bleeding from his nose and asks what is happening to the old man, why he suddenly decided to beat him. Elder Howard reports that Melvin angered someone who shouldn't have, and for this he will die. Melvin starts screaming and trying to make excuses, saying that Howard knows perfectly well who he is and shouldn't do that. The old man reports that even though Melvin positions himself as a messenger from the Fort of Evil Spirits, he was able to see through his fraud and the real messenger has long since arrived at the Sect. After which Howard takes out his staff, saying that he will no longer be able to fool him, and begins to absorb a huge amount of energy. Charging a very powerful attack, he orders Melvin to rejoice because he will go away from his mourning outburst. The old man says that it is difficult to determine who the envoy of Fort is, but the governor had an antidote, and the pill cannot be faked, so he is a real envoy. Howard stands in front of Melvin, who is lying on the ground, hoping that he has breathed his last. Meanwhile, Alistair orders Alana to sit quietly and he will answer all questions after everything is over. At this moment, Melvin turns out to be still alive and with the last of his strength tries to get up, getting down on one knee, saying that Howard has forgotten who his real owner is. He begins to shout that there is no longer any point in leaving the old man alive. His eyes turn sharply red, and his whole body is covered with protruding veins. Elder Howard is surprised that his friend is still alive and decides not to relax just yet. At the same moment, Melvin begins to use a forbidden technique. His body transforms, turning into an incomprehensible and strange monster. Old Howard says that the messenger foresaw that he would transform into the ninth form and he was ready for it. He again begins to absorb energy, launching a mournful flash towards Melvin in the form of a huge number of blue skulls. The enraged monster begins to scream, and his eyes exude an incredible thirst for death and rage. Using his fists, he begins to fight off the projectiles flying at him with his bare hands. The chapter, observing everything that is happening from the sidelines, assumes that at this rate, Elder Howard will be a loser. Alistair decides to help the old man and grabs a stone lying nearby and throws it towards the monster with incredible force. A passing rock hits Melvin in the stomach, causing him serious damage. The old man, sensing that his opponent was noticeably weakened, decides that this is his chance to finish him off with one blow. Howard once again uses his morning flash technique and launches a swarm of blue skulls at Melvin. After receiving injuries, the monster can no longer resist and falls to the ground, and the old man is glad that everything went exactly as the messenger predicted. Howard also understands that their battle has caused a huge amount of noise, and he needs to escape from the crime scene as soon as possible. Meanwhile, the head, sitting in hiding, wants to leave quickly, but the main character stops her, saying that this is not the end. They notice how Melvin, lying on the ground in the guise of a monster, begins to show signs of life. He only pretended to be dead because he understood that the situation had seriously changed, and he urgently needed to return and report this to the Lord of Evil. Alistair immediately stands in his way, accompanied by the head, ironically saying that they ended up here by pure chance. Melvin realizes that his affairs are not going well and in a panic begins to think about what to do. The protagonist kindly says that he will leave the head to deal with the monster, and in the meantime he will find Old Man Howard. Alana says that they should refrain from asking unnecessary questions and begins to summon the spiritual blade. Melvin, realizing that he is now too weak to resist the head, decides that he needs to try to escape as soon as possible. Alana is not going to let the traitor go so easily and decides to prove that it is not just that she is at the head of the sect and uses her spiritual weapons perfectly. In a couple of moments, the monster's body, tormented and chopped into small pieces, falls onto the bloody ground. The head leaves Melvin's mutilated body behind him, showing with all his terrifying appearance that he holds his title for a reason. After which the girl says that she should not be underestimated because she would never allow a traitor to escape right from under her nose. At that very second, Alana feels a strange and ominous energy behind her, realizing that nothing good will come from this. Meanwhile, Melvin, chopped into small pieces, turns out to be alive and says that the chapter looks very appetizing and attractive. At this time, Elder Howard is trying to return to the sect as soon as possible so that he will not be suspected of anything. Alistair very quickly catches up with him and orders him not to rush because there is one more task for the old man. They both stop at high speed and Howard tries to find out what exactly the young master needed. The protagonist explains that Melvin only pretended to be dead and, if he had not been here, this mistake would have been very costly. After which he orders Howard to go to the Lance sect and take the Phoenix Song spear from them. Having issued new instructions to his subordinate after some time, he returns to the very place where he left Alana to fight. He notices a girl lying unconscious on the ground, realizing that her consciousness was absorbed into the mental space of that monster. At this time, somewhere in a parallel dimension filled with rivers of blood, the head of the sect is in limbo. In front of her are the transformed Melvin, who looks even less like an ordinary person. Alana immediately assumes that he is one of the 4 rulers of the fort, to which the monster replies that his master has already devoured everyone. The monster says that he hid all the assets for a very long time, and every time he saw the head in front of him, he was overwhelmed with excitement and passion. He asks the girl to accompany him, and then tries to touch her breast with his hand. Before he can carry out his plan, his hand is torn off, causing an unbearable scream to be heard throughout the area. Melvin looks at the severed hand, noticing strange purple symbols on it, and realizes that these are runes from Dainichi's technique. Raising his head up, he notices Alistair, who orders him to immediately release Alana because he is just a pawn of the evil spirit's fort, and is neither a human nor a demon. Looking at the main character with surprise, he is perplexed when such a skilled master capable of mastering such techniques appeared on the mainland. The protagonist advises him to find out this from the Lord of Hell, and at that very second splits his body into small pieces, leaving only blood splashes throughout the area. As soon as Melvin is defeated, the head is immediately freed from his shackles and wakes up, regaining consciousness. Alana thanks our hero for saving her, asking if this creature was actually one of the elders. Alistair says that he was still half human, and this form was the final technique for turning into a demon. The girl is shocked by what she heard, not imagining how many cards the evil spirits have hidden up their sleeves, wondering whether they will be able to withstand such a dangerous enemy. The protagonist tries to calm the head down, advising him to take care of his wounds at the moment, and promising that they can deal with the Scarlet Sky Palace and the evil fort in the future. After some time and returning to his chambers, Alistair discovers Elder Mistletoe sleeping on his bed and decides not to interrupt her sweet sleep and lie down next to her. The next morning, the main character, lying in an embrace with a beautiful girl, tries to wake her up and says that the sun has already risen. The girl opens her eyes and is frightened and immediately begins to feel embarrassed, asking the main character when exactly he returned back, and how they ended up in the same bed. The main character explains that he returned last night, and did not do anything shameful with the elder. Going outside, Mistletoe stumbles upon her student, who reports that she arrived by order of the head of the sect and did not want to interfere with the mentor's time with the governor. Elder Mistletoe blushes slightly, saying not to make up any vulgarities because she came here a couple of minutes earlier on urgent business. Their conversation is interrupted by Alistair, saying that they have been disturbing him since the morning and it would be better for them to go to the palace, over which clouds are beginning to gather. At this time, the head of the sect, accompanied by his elders, watches as dark clouds oozing with violet energy appear above their palace. A strange man in a mask greets the head, saying that they have not seen each other for many years and he did not expect that they would all gather to meet him with such honors. Meanwhile, Alana is not very happy about his appearance, but nevertheless allows him to settle inside her palace. The masked man says that they haven't seen each other for a long time and he missed each of them terribly. He descends to the ground, standing opposite Elder Mason and wondering how he feels after their long-standing battle in the distant past. Mason replies that his wounds and grievances have healed a long time ago, and he does not hold any grudge against him. The masked man invites the old man to fight again, arguing that it is good practice to improve their fighting skills. Alana decides to stop this mockery, and in a very rude manner finds out exactly why they came to her sect. The masked man with a very arrogant look begins to laugh, saying that he brought 4 of the worst students with him because the Battle of the Mainland is about to begin. And on the eve of such a grand event, he wants them to take a look at the prowess of the Wang sect and get it from your disciples. The disciples of the Wang sect, who were watching everything that was happening, did not understand why they should compete because they would most likely lose. Meanwhile, the head of the sect, Alana, wonders how the disciples of a masked man who arrived from another sect managed to achieve such a level of power. Elder Michael says that the masked man's name is Isaac and apparently he believes that no one in the Wang sect can fight back. Isaac replies that he would gladly compete with all the elders of the Wang sects, but today their students will compete. These words, which clearly showed incredible self-confidence, as well as arrogance towards other people, incredibly infuriated Elder Michael. Isaac starts shouting with delight, and saying that this is not a place for competitions and they should go to the arena. At this moment, our main character appears behind Mrs. Alana and asks for forgiveness for his lateness. The head of the sect, realizing that the entire elite has gathered, offers to go to their arena and continue to sort things out there. After some time, all our heroes find themselves on a huge stone platform not far from the temple of the Wang sect. Arriving at the arena, Isaac notices that there is no Howard among the oldest Van sect and decides to provoke Alana by saying that they are at the same level of power. She replies that the elder is seriously ill and will not be able to attend this friendly competition today. The masked man decides not to waste time and offers to start the first battle, nominating his student as a candidate, asking her to show her what she is capable of. The formidable and muscular girl declares that she is a disciple of the Scarlet Sky sect, and she challenges the master of the Van sect to a duel. The disciples of the Wang sect standing outside the arena, looking at such a formidable warrior, in no case want to nominate themselves as candidates because they are afraid of being beaten. At this time, the elders of the sect are trying to come to an agreement and understand which of their students will emerge as the first candidate for the duel. Elder Mason kindly asks Alistair for advice and assistance in finding a suitable candidate. The Echidna protagonist grins, saying that at yesterday's meeting they did not support his decisions, but now they are asking for help. The elders admit that they were wrong and in the future they will follow the will of the Viceroy at all costs. Michael, watching this situation, is in shock, realizing that his colleagues did not even turn to him for advice before asking the main character for help. The protagonist says that he does not hold a grudge against the elders, but next time they should think better about their decisions. I suggest nominating the student Darshia as a candidate. The girl, with incredible zeal, immediately grabs her blade, saying that she will try to fully live up to her mentor's expectations. Enter the arena. Darshia states that she is Elder Mistletoe's disciple and her power level is at the breaking point. The girl with purple hair, who is her opponent, grins and says that she went out to certain death. Watching from the sidelines, the students of the Wang sect try to dissuade their friend, saying that she cannot cope with a stronger opponent. They also begin to get angry and blame our protagonist for everything that is happening, suspecting that he deliberately sent their friend to certain death. Mistletoe is also concerned about the situation in which her student finds herself and asks Alistair whether she really has the strength for which he asks her not to doubt. Energy begins to emanate from the disciple of the Scarlet Sky sect, and she says that the swordswoman has one last chance to surrender. Having received a refusal and unwillingness to lose to the formidable one, the warrior begins to absorb a huge amount of energy, preparing a powerful attack. Slamming her fist into the air, she releases a powerful blast of energy in the shape of a hand, flying towards Darcy. At the last moment, the girl manages to evade inevitable death and end up behind her opponent. Using her skills and reaction speed, Darshia prepares the Heavenly Abundance technique and brings it to the 9th form. The warrior easily manages to repel the blow using the air bell technique, which completely protects herself from attacks flying at her. You understand that this is not enough. Darshia says that this is not all that she is capable of and begins to prepare the 10th form of the Heavenly Abundance technique. The girl begins to move around the air bell at incredible speed, creating a vortex. Isaac, who is watching the fight, grins and says that the swordswoman does not have enough strength and will not be able to break through the air bell of their sect. Meanwhile, Alistair asks the head of Alana to keep a closer eye on the girl because this is not the end of the fight. Having picked the right moment, Darcy still manages to break through the defense of the air bell and reach his opponent. At the same second, a huge explosion occurs and a huge stream of air scatters throughout the arena. With this attack, Darcy manages to injure her opponent, and the girl with purple hair decides to ask how exactly she did it. The students of the Bath sect watching the fight are in complete shock because they did not expect that their sister had such skills. Mistress Alana understands that the girl has used up all her strength and says that the outcome of the battle is determined and the fight can be considered completed. Darcia immediately goes downstairs, bows to our main character, and says that she did everything exactly as the governor told her, after which Alistair turns towards the mistletoe and asks her to bring him water as his throat is dry. Noticing this, all the elders of the sect are shocked, not understanding why Mistletoe is courting the governor like that, suspecting that there is something between them. At this moment, Michael decides to joke, saying it's a pity that he is a man, since he would like to be in Mistletoe's place and also be closer to the governor. Meanwhile, the girl with purple hair says that swordswoman managed to see the gap in her defense and does not understand how she managed it. Isaac explains that it was not the swordswoman who managed to identify the very place, but the young man who stands next to the head of the sect and does not understand how he managed it. In the next one, the second disciple of the Scarlet Sky sect with green hair and huge tattoos all over his body comes out to fight. Seeing the next opponent, the students of the Wang sect again rush into horror, realizing that he is stronger than the previous girl. The head of the sect, Alana, is also very concerned about who to put up for the next duel and decides to consult with the main character. Alistair replies that he himself will fight in the next fight, and the head tries to stop him, saying that their strength is at different levels. He tells Alana not to forget that in battle she relies not only on spiritual strength, but also on other components of cultivation. At this time, the disciples of the Wang sect do not understand why the governor himself came out to fight because, in their opinion, he was only their talisman. Meanwhile, the green-haired man begins to concentrate the energy, and it takes the form of a scarlet shining tiger. Concerned, Mistletoe says that this is a high-level technique that the Viceroy cannot handle, and Casper states that it is nothing more than window dressing. Having accumulated enough energy, the same man rushes towards our main character, declaring that he has a few seconds left to live. At the last moment, Alistair manages to dodge the attack, causing sincere surprise from his opponent. Then follows a powerful blow using the power of the Divine Eye, which everyone present clearly did not expect to see. Everyone watching the battle, including the head of the Bath sect, is shocked to realize how strong our main character is. The green-haired man falls to the ground, making it appear that he was defeated with just one blow. In his head, he understands that he is not in the most advantageous situation and needs to retreat and come up with a new plan, after which the air suddenly rises. Alistair tells him not to even think about escaping and then pierces him with a beam of blue energy. The man begins to cough up blood and then falls to his knees, realizing that he has received a non-life-threatening injury. When he asks who our protagonist is, Alistair replies that he has already introduced himself to him before. He declares that he is an executioner for him, and that's all he needs to know, after which he pierces his body several more times with rays of blue energy. Having emerged victorious in this battle, he stands with his back to the defeated enemy, who is bleeding while lying down, and angry Isaac immediately begins to scream, calling the main character an insolent person who dared to kill his student. Alistair states that Isaac indicated at the very beginning that it did not matter whether there would be casualties during the battles, so he did not break any rules. Elder Mason, who observed everything that was happening from the sidelines, states that the skills of the governor are terrifying and he cannot even guess who his mentor was. Mistletoe says that his skills far exceed any of the elders and most likely he has no equal on the entire continent. Elder Lewis, in his thoughts, considered the Viceroy to be a resourceful person, but did not even suspect that he possessed such frightening power. Mistress Alana is surprised by more and more new forms of our main character, and orders him to get down from the arena. Before leaving, the main character picks up from the floor a ring that fell from the body of the enemy he defeated. Alistair also offers to continue their fun by saying that their sect has 2 more students, and they can go up to the arena. At the same moment, the disciples of the Wang sect again fall into horror because they do not know who will go next to fight on their side. Meanwhile, 2 of Isaac's students begin to ask their mentor to allow them to avenge their friend and release them to the next duel. Isaac states that they are very stupid for not realizing that one look from this person will reveal their weak points, and they will not be able to cope with him. At the same moment, the girl with purple hair participating in the first duel notices that their friend's ring is missing. Isaac and the 2 students standing behind him are quite dumbfounded by this information. The main character, meanwhile, stands with an arrogant face and juggles the same ring, asking whether they will fight further. Isaac immediately turns to the head of the sect, Alana, declaring that he did not expect to see thieves among her subordinates, and demands to immediately return the ring. The lady declares that she is not going to return anything because first he must provide evidence that this is in fact their ring. The main character says that if this ring really belonged to their student, let him tell what is in it. The girl with purple hair states that there are about 200,000 baht there, which in turn are the currency of this world, and can also be used to restore spiritual power. Alistair tells them to take a closer look at what exactly is there, and opens a ring from which those same baht in the form of golden balls begin to fall. He says that there are at least 500,000 baht here, and therefore this ring did not belong to him, and in his head Alistair remembers that 90,000 years ago he found out that this guy hid money. Isaac orders the young man to immediately return the ring, otherwise he will be in trouble. Their conversation is unexpectedly interrupted by Elder Howard, who descends from the winged phoenix, saying that he has fulfilled the governor's instructions. He hands him a 9th-grade spear called the Song of the Phoenix, also noting that the seal placed on it has noticeably weakened it. Alistair picks up a spear wrapped in scraps of cloth, and says that he has something that will help remove the seal. He removes the cloth from the spear and sees red runes sparkling on the majestic and powerful golden spear, weakening its power. At the same moment, Isaac does not understand how the Phoenix Song fell into the hands of Howard, because the Chi sect wanted to give it to them as a sign of their submission. At the same second, a red medallion appears in Alistair's other hand, emitting suspicious, ominous energy. Isaac is even more surprised, realizing that this is the medallion of their sect and cannot find answers to how this young man knew that it was in his student's vault. The main character says that Scarlet Sky specifically placed a curse on the spear in order to get it at its disposal, and then use all its power by removing the seal. Alistair breaks the seal and begins to release all the energy of the Phoenix Song spear. After removing the seal, he makes a sharp swing and releases a huge beam of energy that pierces the sky and rushes into the distance. He gives the spear to Elder Luis, declaring that he has fulfilled his promise to give him a new weapon. Mistress Alana states that the spear must recognize its owner, and is confident that Luis will succeed. The elder begins to pour part of his spiritual power into the spear, merging with it into one whole and saying that from now on he is its owner. Meanwhile, Isaac continues to be angry, realizing that he should have first gone to the Chi sect and picked up the spear, and only then come here. Observing this situation, other elders say that they need to show their best side in front of the governor, and maybe he will grant them the same high-class weapons. Elder Lewis's eyes begin to glow with a bright red flame, and he says that although his weapon is very strong, he will try to handle it. At this time, Casper asks permission from the head and governor to detain the guests who have arrived to them. The main character says that this is not necessary, and also asks Isaac not to make any more plans regarding the Bath sect. Otherwise the ending will be a foregone conclusion. The masked man agrees with this statement, and then says that he just needs to find out the name of the main character. Alistair declares that Isaac is not worthy of knowing him now, and asks him to get lost along with his students. After their departure, the disciples of the Wang sect begin to rejoice and bless the Viceroy. Realizing that the ordeal is over, they will not have to fight. When asked by Mrs. Alana how the main character knew about the affairs of the Chi sect, he replies that Elder Howard obtained all the information, and we need to thank him. The city does not understand why he suddenly received such an attitude towards his person, and wonders what kind of relationship the main character and Alana have. The head of the sect expresses his gratitude, and also promises that Howard will receive a reward for his efforts. The elder immediately bows and thanks for such generous praise, realizing that he is forced to carry out all the orders of the main character, because it is he who gives him the antidote. Alistair says that he is very glad that everything is over and asks the three elders to follow him because he has one more thing to do. After some time, the main character gives the elders a piece of paper on which the ingredients that need to be obtained are written. They carefully study everything that is written on it, and proudly declare that the governor can rely on them. At this time, Alana realizes that the main character has a new plan and asks why the objects that she must bring are intended for murder. Alistair asks the lady to be patient, and also asks to order his sister to come to the reservoir of the highest frequency. The girl says that she is still just a baby and hopes that the protagonist will not do anything bad to her. The The main character is surprised that Alana calls her sister baby and looking at her magnificent breasts, and declares that in some places she is far from small. Then she grins and says that compared to you, she's really not that old. The girl immediately blushes and begins to feel embarrassed. They say that Alistair is such an impudent person, and he infuriated her incredibly. Some time later, when night falls, the main character, in the company of Darcy, goes to a reservoir of the highest purity. The girl is embarrassed looking at the half-naked governor, and promises to protect him while he performs the ritual. Having entered the pond, the main character greets the girl in it, and asks what brought her here. The princess who is in the pond, whom he saved at the very beginning of his story, says that the elder sister said that the governor would come to the reservoir. The girl rushes into his arms, and the main character asks that her best friend is nearby. The princess praises our hero, saying that she heard how he taught the people from the Scarlet Sky Palace a lesson, because since their last meeting he has become much stronger. Alistair looks straight into the eyes of the slightly embarrassed beauty, asking where, in her opinion, he is the strongest. The girl replies that he is strong and incredible in everything and then merges with him in a passionate and tender kiss, after which they become one, and the princess begins to gently and loudly moan with pleasure. Darcia, who is nearby, perfectly hears the sweet moans, causing a slight blush to appear on her face. After some time, the princess throws a towel over herself, saying that it is time for her to leave. After saying goodbye to the girl, Alistair takes out the ring of one of Isaac's students, and says that it is time for the next stage. He opens the vault, and begins pouring a huge amount of bot directly into the pond. He begins to release the spiritual power stored inside these spheres and then absorbs their contents into his body. At the same moment, a huge amount of energy begins to accumulate in the sky above the reservoir, causing thunder discharges. The nearby swordswoman Darcia suggests that a natural disaster has struck their sect. A few seconds later, thunderous lightning sharply rushes towards our main character, and Darcy at that moment decides to save the governor, and immediately rushes towards the lightning trying to repel it. The girl immediately tries to use the 10th form of the abundance technique, and cope with the terrifying elements. Her strength turns out to be insufficient. Her body is struck by a powerful electric discharge, throwing her to the side. Located in the main temple of the sect, Casper tries to guess who exactly caused the hurricane, and the head of the sect, Alana, realizing that the governor is there, sees that this lightning strike exceeds the power of the boundary of the cycle. A moment before lightning strikes his body, Alistair raises his hand up and manages to subjugate the element by taking it into his hands. Acting with incredible composure, he also manages to catch a girl falling from the sky. Darcia thanks the Viceroy, and he orders her to sit down and concentrate as he uses the power of thunder to help her surpass the second milestone. The girl, without any hesitation, begins to fulfill the request of the main character and begins to absorb energy in the lotus position. The main character performs the same ritual with her as with the head of the sect, releasing a huge amount of energy into the girl's body, making her moan with pleasure. Alistair says that her level is the 3rd stage of the cycle boundary, and she was able to skip one thanks to her diligence in improving her fencing techniques. He also orders the girl to stay here while her body is rebuilt, and when she comes into balance, let her find him. After some time, he again meets with 3 elders who apparently fulfilled his instructions. Casper says that when he saw that the clouds were gathering over the pond, he immediately realized that the main character was there, and then held out a bottle with the blood of a fiery beast. Mistletoe says that she managed to get the vein of a winged dragon, and also notes that its properties are extremely useful in cultivation. Lewis enthusiastically presents the main character with the trunk of the great tree. They say that if you add it to the previous ingredients, the effect will have an extraordinary effect on increasing the level. Alistair thanks everyone for the work done. He understands perfectly well that all these natural materials are perfect for improvement, but he can use them for other purposes. After which the main character goes to the hall of the head of the sect, which also managed to get the necessary materials. The girl says that she fulfilled his request and puts on the table a small dagger inscribed with runes, as well as a piece of fabric with unknown symbols. Alistair picks up this very piece of fabric and says that the talisman of samsara is extremely good, and he expected less. Realizing that the head of the sect has a lot of questions, he allows her to ask him anything she wants. Alana says that she carefully studied the books regarding the materials that he requested and makes an interesting assumption. The protagonist immediately agrees with the girl, saying that she thinks correctly, and he needs subordinates of a very high level. The main character uses his power and combines all the materials he has received into one whole. He begins to pour his energy into objects, not being entirely sure whether his experiment will be successful. If the ritual fails, not only will he be left empty-handed, but all this power will turn against him. After which there is a powerful surge of energy, and in place of the objects a strange doll resembling a person appears. Her frightening, menacing appearance immediately changes, and she begins to grimace, greeting her master. Mistress Alana, clearly not expecting such an effect, asks if this is really the same high-level puppet. Alistair replies that although she is not very beautiful, he still managed to accomplish what he had planned. He uses the ring on his hand to open the vault, saying that there is still work to be done and the puppet is not perfect. He places the doll inside the ring, telling the head of the sect not to pay attention to its appearance, because with its help she will be able to improve in the future. The main character is about to leave. They say that he finally wants to find the elders, and also adds that Mrs. Alana is no longer his rival and she needs to overcome the free line as soon as possible. At this time, the elders are fighting in the forest, practicing their fighting skills and preparing for the battle of the mainland. Their training is interrupted by Alistair asking them to give him some time because he has an important announcement. Mistletoe immediately jumps in, deciding that the governor again needs to carry out some kind of assignment, or that he has managed to notice mistakes in their training. The main character says that he came here so that they could practice a little together, and asks Elder Lewis to demonstrate his skills with the spear. The man states that since the main character is his savior, he will not dare to raise his hand to him and start attacking. The protagonist states that he himself is asking for a full-fledged battle, and if he suddenly gets hurt, then we'll talk about this topic. Elder Lewis agrees with the will of the protagonist, and immediately lunges in his direction. To the surprise of everyone present, Alistair manages to block the spear attack by squeezing the tip with 2 fingers. He makes fun of the elder, saying that he had a bad lunch today and should not be embarrassed to give his best. The elder immediately releases all his power and the power of the phoenix spear and tries to attack our protagonist again. At the last moment, Alistair manages to dodge the attack and bring his index finger right to Lewis's face, after which he puts a small amount of strength into his hand and throws the elder in the opposite direction. Holding a phoenix spear in his hands, he orders all the elders and the swordswoman Darcia to attack him at the same time. Lewis warns the protagonist that the spear recognizes only its owner, and if he uses it, its power may turn against him. The main character says that Lewis should worry about how to get his weapon back and immediately makes a powerful attack, simultaneously hitting everyone present. This blow turns out to be a technique called the triad, which our protagonist was able to easily use after reaching the spiritual milestone. At this very second, after using that very technique, thunderclaps of lightning begin to form in the sky above our heroes. Alistair notes that if he managed to cause thunder to roll again, then the triad is a very amazing technique. Without having time to turn around, one of the ball lightnings immediately rushes towards our protagonist. All the elders immediately rush towards the terrible elements, trying to protect the governor from imminent death. At this time, the disciples of the Bat Sect, who are located near the temple, notice the horror happening in the sky and cannot even imagine what is happening there. The main character grins, realizing that even heaven is against him developing at such a fast pace. He begins to laugh loudly. Looking into the heavens, they say that death awaits the violator of universal laws. But unfortunately, no one is able to stop him. After the storm subsides, he returns the spear to Lewis, praising them for fighting hard against the thunder as it was a good chance for their advancement. After which he declares that he still has some work to do and orders the elders to continue their hard training. In the evening of the same day, he again finds himself at a reservoir of the highest purity together with Alana, who asks whether the storm that recently occurred was his fault. Alistair states that the head of the sect has nothing to worry about because he will not allow anyone to suffer because of him. Mrs. Alana informs our protagonist that tonight an auction will begin in the capital, which will last 2 days and he should try his luck. The main character notes that the capital is a commercial city of the mainland and a place of constant gatherings of the nobility. The girl says that the highlight of the program will be the egg of a mystical beast, but no one knows what kind of creature is in it. Alistair agrees that this is a very interesting idea and asks how many bats the Van sect currently has. The lady says that they have about 100 million baht in their treasury and invites him to participate in the auction. The protagonist states that he himself wanted to go to the capital to get the materials necessary for the puppet, as well as to get the Dauha key. He also explains to Alana that if they win the Battle of the Mainland, they will only be able to get to the upper tier of Dauha. But there is another one and there is a person on it who needs to be freed. The girl can't believe her ears and tries to find out how exactly he found out that there was a person there, and who he was. Alistair replies that the secret of this world is far beyond their imagination, and it is time for him to prepare to leave. When asked by the head who the main character will take with him on the trip, he replies that he will go there alone because he has an old friend there. He also orders Mrs. Alana to overcome the free line in his absence because the battle will be extremely dangerous. The next morning, the protagonist is seen off by the elders on his way to the capital, and he boards a huge flying ship. Finally, he once again expresses the hope that everyone understood his instructions and upon his return they will be on a completely different level. Darcia and Elder Luis bow, saying that the Viceroy has nothing to worry about and wish him a good journey. Our main character moves on a flying ship towards the capital and at one moment flies over the very place from the beginning of his story. He sees a huge magical sphere and 4 stone statues guarding it. He asks him to wait a little because he will soon return and free him. He also notes that in his current state he can use his Dainichi technique. Alistair's body is covered in purple flame because Dainichi uses a rare method of improving the body, contributing to its rapid improvement. The main character remembers that right now he is flying on a wooden ship towards the capital, and the whole ship also suddenly begins to blaze with a violet flame. The protagonist jumps off the ship in the hope that on the way to land he will be able to stumble upon someone's ship. Flying several thousand meters, he notices a ship on the deck of which there are people discussing something. Landing on the deck of the ship, he calls his name, saying that his ship was wrecked and asks to be taken to the capital. A girl standing next to her with blue hair and an expressive neckline declares that she is the owner of the ship, and the men standing behind the main character want to take away her ship. Alistair points his finger at them and says that he can easily deal with them. At the same time, I notice that this is the girl, his old friend Brittany. She slightly doubts the strength of our protagonist, stating that he just fell from the sky and is unlikely to be able to deal with the robbers. One of the robbers shouts that if the stranger wants to live, he shouldn't poke his nose into someone else's business. Alistair turns in his direction with an arrogant look, asking who exactly is threatening him with violence. The man replies that he is the deputy chairman of the Flying Clouds Trade Union and everything that happens here is their personal business. After which he asks who our main character is. Alistair again uses the violet flame technique, saying that the dead have no need to know his name. The man's body immediately begins to burn, and he is gradually covered in terrible technology. He falls to his knees and begins to beg for mercy, saying that he will do whatever he is ordered to do, asking him to put out this flame. The main character doesn't even look in his direction. He says that it's too late, and only death awaits him. After dealing with all the robbers, the main character picks up the vault rings remaining from their charred bodies. Brittany immediately rushes to thank the stranger who saved her and her ship. In exchange for his help, Alistair asks to give him all the rings of the vault left by the robbers. The girl, of course, does not object and orders her subordinates to immediately collect and bring the rings to the master. She hands him 2 rings in her hands and once again thanks the stranger for his help. Alistair understands that after he interrupted the time loop, the whole world began to change a little and decides to ask Brittany if she is on her way to the capital to participate in the auction. The girl doesn't understand how he knows her name, but decides not to show it, and says that she would love to take part in the auction, but their trade union doesn't have that much money. Their conversation is interrupted by a small white-haired girl who looks out from behind Brittany and asks the main character to play with her. Brittany immediately turns towards the little girl, calling her Shani and telling her not to pester strangers. The main character turns out to be quite surprised because he did not expect to meet this child here and wants to be in the capital as soon as possible, and also decides not to refuse the little girl. After some time, their ship still finds itself flying over the walls and houses of a huge city. Britain informs Alistair that flights over the capital are prohibited, and since their trade union is small, they will not be able to drop anchor only at the small gate. The main character remembers that in order to pass through the main gate you need to pass a strength test, but people who are able to withstand the pressure of a height of 5,000 meters can be counted on one hand. At the same moment, his thoughts are interrupted by a huge ship flying over their small ship, moving towards the main gate. Brittany immediately orders everyone to move away because this is the ship of the Thundercloud Sect, and if they displease them, then everyone will die. Standing on the deck of the ship, the head of the Thundercloud Sect, Ray, orders everyone to stay away from him and not interfere with the test. Alistair declares that he is reluctant to listen to this boy's nagging, and the girl at that moment asks for forgiveness and says that they need to fly away. Meanwhile, the Storm Cloud ship lands and Ray asks everyone to watch its power because it is going to set a new record. At this moment, the old man with a cane in his hand says that the head of the Thundercloud is so young, but has already reached the turn of the whirlpool, and perhaps he can actually demonstrate something miraculous during the test. Alistair notices that the elder is mistaken, because this test is not related to the strength of Chi. The head of the capital, whose name is Bertun, was never close in level to this boy, but during the test he was able to withstand a pressure of 9,000 meters. Brittany immediately asks the main character a question about measuring a person's strength, and asks how much the strength of Chi reflects the quality of cultivation. The main character explains that the amount of energy accumulated in the body is only part of a person's total strength, but cultivation is a complex manifestation of the abilities of the one who uses the power of Chi. When using abilities, energy is consumed, but if you rely only on its reserves, forgetting about improvement, then all that this person will have is this energy, which he will not be able to realize in any way. He also says that the test here actually tests the ability to control power, which is why for many years no one has been able to break the record of the head of the capital. The elder is still sure that the head of the sect is a real genius, and saying that towards him is too rude. Meanwhile, Ray stands in front of the main gate, and sees a huge stone slab in front of her. He jumps onto this platform, ordering everyone to watch his strength because today he will break the record. The guards standing at the gates of the capital mark the beginning of the test, and ask everyone to be extremely careful. Ray begins to put his power into the slab he is on, and 2 golden beams of energy shoot into the sky. Followers of the Thundercloud Sect, located on the ship, watch their master and count the number of meters to which the rays rise. Meanwhile, the elders order Brittany to go and greet the young master because who knows, maybe he will help them in the future. The girl clearly turns out to be slightly saddened because she does not want to come into contact with such a person and expresses her disagreement. The old man declares that after the death of his student she behaves inappropriately, because every year their fleet becomes smaller, and only she remains of the entire crew. An old woman standing nearby orders not to put pressure on the young girl, saying that if she doesn't want to, they will go to negotiations themselves. At this moment, Ray, who continues to undergo the test, already understands that his strength is at its limit, and he has only reached 4,000 meters, and this is a real shame. At this moment, he is interrupted by 2 elders who express their respect and are also surprised at the young master's abilities. Ray laughs, realizing that all his thoughts were focused on how to avoid shame, and a way out of the situation was found on its own. He immediately grabs the 2 elders by the throat, amazed at how they had the audacity to break his concentration, and they deserved to die. Brittany immediately tries to stop him, but the students of their trade union manage to stop her, saying that he will destroy the entire ship if he gets angry. The head of the Thundercloud Sect mocks the bodies of the old people, saying that he would have broken the record if they had not stopped him. At the same moment, he raises his head into the sky and notices another ship flying over the capital and arriving in the city. On the deck of the ship stands the daughter of the head of the capital, whose name is Vanessa, and behind her is her subordinate. This gentleman turns out to be one of the students of the Ice Sky Temple and asks the lady not to waste time on this rich man. Vanessa says that she is interested in the Flying Cloud ship, which is located near the main gate. She asks to pay attention to our main character, who did not bat an eye and exuded amazing composure while watching the death of his people. The man assumes that he is frozen with fear and decides to force this ostentatious insolent to show his true face. He decides to provoke the head of the sect with a thundercloud, saying that his concentration was disrupted by people from a third-rate union. Aggression immediately appears on Ray's face because he is well aware that he could not break the record in any case. He points his finger to the sky and orders the ship of flying clouds to descend immediately. Brittany immediately begins to apologize and ask Mr. Ray for mercy because her people had no intention of stopping him. The head of the Thundercloud sect exudes bestial rage, saying that they themselves must understand that after this incident they do not have long to live. His speech is immediately interrupted by that same little white-haired girl, who shouts that he is a fool and they are not to blame for his failure. At the same moment, their ship begins to fire at a huge number of energy flares. Ray points out that the trade union little one is too daring, and he declares that he is giving them a challenge that they dare not refuse. He is rapidly moving towards their ship with the desire to smash it into small pieces and destroy every member of the crew. All people begin to suddenly panic and lose control of the ship, realizing that certain death awaits them. Vanessa immediately decides that they need to get help, but the man behind her dissuades her, saying that there is no need to worry about this bunch of insects. Watching everything that happens, Alistair realizes that this whole situation is just wasting his time. He immediately disappears in the blink of an eye right before the eyes of Ray moving towards their ship. Before he even realizes what happened, the head of the Thundercloud Sect receives a powerful kick to the face. Alistair knocks him out with one blow, and causes his body to fall towards the main gates of the capital. Everyone present, including the daughter of the head of the capital, Vanessa, who is watching all this, is shocked. Brittany at this moment understands that she herself, along with her ship and crew, survived death and calmly exhales. Ray's body reaches the ground and crashes into one of the walls of the capital, and the main character takes a place on that very slab to pass the test. The main character looks at the head of the Thundercloud Sect with contempt, telling him that he wants to demonstrate something incredibly exciting. He begins to concentrate his power, realizing that the characteristics of his body are unremarkable and the internal strength in him is not that great. But with the help of spiritual fusion he can achieve results. At the same second, a huge beam of light rushes into the sky, illuminating the entire capital with its radiance. Watching the members of the Thundercloud Sect, they can believe their eyes. One of the students manages to notice that the light pole has already risen 8,000 meters and is about to break the record of the head of the capital. At one point, everyone who watches what is happening falls into even greater shock, realizing that the pillar has crossed the 10,000 meter mark. Alistair realizes that he put on a small show and forced all the people of the capital to pay attention to him, exuding a colossal amount of energy. At this moment, Ray, who is nearby, begins to cough up blood and tries to withstand the pressure that our protagonist exudes. Everyone present asks the gentleman to stop, because the head of the Thundercloud Sect simply cannot withstand such an aura and will die, so he needs to be dragged away. One of the elders of the Thundercloud Sect also stands up for his master, ordering the main character to stop immediately. Alistair, with an arrogant and imperturbable look, says that it makes no difference to him whether he dies or survives. At this time, inside the capital, one of the elders is informed that someone managed to break the record of the head of their city. The man does not believe his ears and immediately decides to personally go outside and check what is happening, seeing with his own eyes a huge beam of light. He notices that the pillar has reached a height of 20,000 meters and assumes that the descendants of outstanding ancestors have arrived. The elder immediately orders to inform everyone that no one dare touch the person inside the pillar of light. Meanwhile, Alistair stands next to the corpse of the head of the Thundercloud Sect and asks him to be removed from here. The elders and sects immediately begin to blame the Flying Cloud Trade Alliance, and orders them to prepare for death. The union workers immediately begin to make excuses, saying that this gentleman killed the head and they have nothing to do with it, because he is not one of them. Brittany immediately orders everyone to shut up because if he had not saved them, they would have been dead a long time ago. Little Shani also takes the side of the main character, saying that she will protect her brother at the cost of her own life. Alistair immediately returns to the ship, patting the little girl on the head and promising that he will be okay. He also addresses all present members of the trade union, declaring that if anyone is against him being here, let them come forward. Meanwhile, the elders of the Thundercloud Sect are preparing powerful equipment to destroy the ship on which our main character arrived. Two elders, having prepared a powerful bolt of lightning, move towards the ship, declaring that everyone present will be dead. Vanessa immediately stops them, declaring how dare they start fights on the lands of the capital. The elders realize that the eldest daughter of the head is in front of them and say that their master, who arrived at the auction, has just been killed and they demand an explanation. Vanessa, with a menacing and imperturbable look, asks what will happen if there is no explanation. The elders respond that they will have to learn that a thundercloud is not to be trifled with. At the same moment, one of the oldest of the capital appears, accompanied by guards, saying that they allowed themselves too much. After which they bow to the eldest daughter Vanessa and apologize for being late, and the girl replies that along the way she was thrown by a ship of the icy sky, so she arrived earlier. The girl tells the elder that, in her opinion, the thundercloud does not want to take part in the auction and needs to be escorted from the capital. The elders take the body of their leader and promise that their sect will never forget this. After which Vanessa descends on a lotus flower to our main character and asks to know his name. At the same moment, all the union workers try to explain that they are seeing him for the first time and he is not one of their members. Brittany immediately tries to take responsibility by saying that this person is her friend and she is ready to take full responsibility. Vanessa decides to clarify and asks again that none of these three people are members of the union. The workers breathe a sigh of relief and continue to insist that this is the first time they have seen these people. At this moment, Brittany's face shows despair because she understands that her years of effort and torment have gone down the drain. After everything she has heard, the daughter of the head of the capital declares that this trio of people will become honorable guests of the capital, and rooms will be prepared for them in the guest house. Brittany and little Shani are in complete shock and bewilderment from what is happening, not understanding what is happening. As they leave and move towards the capital, union workers shout after them, asking to take them with them. The girl replies that the trade union has turned its back on her, and from now on she wants nothing to do with flying clouds. Alistair offers to help drive away these traders, but Brittany thanks him for the offer, saying that it is better for them to live and live. After some time, Vanessa accompanies our heroes inside the capital and shows local attractions. At this moment, the man from the Ice Sky Sect realizes that his plan has failed and how dare this stranger come so close to Vanessa. The daughter of the head of the capital is trying to find out once again the name of our main character. Alistair leans close to her ear and orders her to take her time, and also to inform her father that his sworn enemy has arrived. Having given a task to a young girl, he decides to go with Brittany and Shani to the guest temple. The elder offers to provide security to them, but Vanessa replies that if he managed to raise the pillar to 20,000 meters, the security here is powerless. The elder understands the hopelessness of this situation and begins to sweat heavily and pray that nothing will happen. After some time, our heroes find themselves in front of the gates of a huge golden temple located right in the heart of the capital. Walking inside, Alistair asks one of the servants when the auction will start, and in response I receive that it will start in 2 hours. While waiting for the auction to start, our main character decides to rest and lie on the bed looking at the storage ring, which he was able to take from the head of the Thundercloud sect. His thoughts are interrupted by a knock on the door, and the servant informs him that Vanessa wants to meet him. The girl comes inside and asks the young gentleman to introduce himself again since he still hasn't learned his name. The main character answers his name in parallel, looking at her beautiful body and realizing that it is not for nothing that she is one of the top 3 most beautiful girls on the continent. When asked by the girl which sect he came from, Alistair replies that she did not have the chance to meet all the masters and he will be expecting the head of the city tomorrow. Vanessa turns out to be very surprised because she doesn't understand how the main character knew that the head of the city was leaving tomorrow because only the elders knew about it. The protagonist laughs and is told that he knows much more than she could imagine and asks to leave him alone. The girl is dumbfounded by such impudence because for the first time in her life a man kicks her out of the room. Vanessa, furious, leaves, leaving the main character alone and looking after her. Alistair realizes that over 100,000 years he has learned well what kind of person she is. When asked by the gentleman from the Ice Sky sect who this stranger is, the daughter of the head of the capital rudely orders not to pester her with stupid questions. The man is completely shocked because he has never seen a girl so irritated and assumes that the main character has done something indecent with her. One of the sect members is waiting for an order to deal with him, but the man stops him and orders him not to run into trouble because he must wait until the end of the auction. After some time, Brittany enters our protagonist's room and says that she is accompanying the girl to her confidant. She explains that they should go to 3rd Street because that's where their colleagues live, and Shani asks Alistair if he will come to visit her because the people who buy it are creepy. Having heard this, the main character is in complete shock because he thought that the girl would be taken to her parents, and they would be sold as a commodity. Brittany says that she herself did not know that things were this way, to which Alistair says that he will go with them. Moving along the streets of our city, The heroes hear strange screams coming from nearby and decide to check what happened there. Entering one of the establishments nearby, they see how some bandits are beating members of the Merchants' Union. Brittany immediately decides to stand up for her former subordinates, ordering them to immediately stop and pay for all losses. A man with an eye patch, who apparently is their captain, asks the girl who she is. Confused, Brittany does not know how to answer this question because she herself left the Union a few hours ago. One of the people of the Union on which the head of the robbers sits states that this girl is their chairman and the cargo was under her responsibility. The robbers grin and say that she looks very tasty, and the main thing of them asks to bring her to him. Brittany turns out to be not the most defenseless girl and, with the help of her technology, repels several robbers. The gang leader declares that the girl is very capable and decides to start attacking her himself using the shadow fist technique. Brittany tries to block his attack with her palm out, and using the most basic defensive technique. Her strength turns out to be insufficient, and her body is thrown back. Finally, she manages to say that it is forbidden to attack other people. The leader of the robbers laughs, saying that the one who is stronger wins and they are just a bunch of weaklings. The main character covers the girl with himself, asking her not to worry because he will take care of everything. Alistair uses the technique of air swords and attacks the attacking robbers with them. Self-confident bandits find themselves in an instant pierced by energy balls flying at them. Their entire gang of robbers suffers a crushing defeat and, lying on the ground, slowly bleeds to death. As they leave, our heroes are stopped by members of the trade union, who ask Brittany to take them back, and this time they will be devoted to her to the end. The girl says that she has already said that their paths have now diverged, and she is no longer part of their union. At the exit from the establishment, our heroes are noticed by a mysterious man in a red and at the same time elegant robe. Looking at the main character, he orders his subordinates to get to know him, but to do without hostility. Moving further and further along the city streets, Alistair orders the girls not to stray too far from him in order to avoid such troubles. After some time, the main character notices that Brittany liked a small bracelet in one of the stores and invites her to buy it. He asks the merchant standing behind the counter how much this bracelet will cost. A flattering and friendly seller, in anticipation of easy money, names the price of 3,000 baht. Brittany is about to leave, saying that it is too expensive, but Alistair immediately takes out the money and pays for the purchase. At the same moment, he is interrupted by Vanessa, who appeared out of nowhere and also liked this bracelet. The Ice Sky Sect member standing behind her says that if she liked him so much, he would give her a gift. Vanessa says that she also really liked this bracelet and asks the main character to give it up. Passers-by watching what is happening from the side say that our protagonist is very lucky, because the daughter of the head of the city is very favorable to him, and he will go far. Alistair picks up the bracelet and says that he is very sorry, but he already has an owner, and then puts it on Brittany's hand. Little Shani immediately begins to smile, and say that this decoration suits her sister very much. After such an action, an unprecedented shock immediately appears on the face of all passers-by, because they do not believe that anyone could refuse the daughter of the head of the capital. Vanessa simply looks at the main character with confused eyes because this has never happened to her before. The girl is about to leave, but a member of the Ice Sky Sect stands up for her, trying to stop Alistair. The main character states that he paid the advertised price for it, and this bracelet belongs to another girl. The man immediately takes out a huge amount of baht from his vault, intending to make a generous offer. He points his finger at the bracelet and asks to sell it for 100,000 baht right here and now. Brittany understands that this is a very good exchange, but still decides to remain silent, waiting for Alistair's reaction. The main character with a straight face declares that this amount of money will not be enough. Passers-by watching this theatrical performance are once again shocked, realizing that for our protagonist there are no authorities. The Ice Sky section member continues to up the ante and dumps even more money on the ground. The merchant who sold them this bracelet, standing behind the counter, advises the main character to agree, because this is a huge amount of money. Alistair shrugs, saying that this is still not enough, pretending that he doesn't care what amount his opponent offers. The man begins to get angry and lose his temper and decides to directly ask at what price he is willing to sell this jewelry. The main character names a price of 100 million, which once again shocks all passers-by observing this situation, because for that kind of money you can buy all the shops in the capital. The members of the sect are immediately seized with rage, and he asks who the main character thinks he is, who just stands there and mocks him. Alistair chuckles and compares the sect members to the recently departed head of the Thundercloud sect, Ray. The man understands that he cannot cope with them alone because their strength is at different levels, after which the main character turns around and simply leaves, leaving Vanessa and her companion in splendid isolation. The daughter of the head of the city experiences incredible emotions that she had not felt until today, trying to understand who exactly the protagonist is. Moving further towards the auction, Brittany asks why the main character refused to sell the bracelet for $1,000,000, to which he receives the answer that it was a gift, and he could not dispose of it. The girl shrugs her eyebrows in her head, realizing that if she had known this before, she would have gladly sold this jewelry. Once at the gate where the auction will take place, our heroes are stopped by the guards, who say that their invitation has expired. Confused, Brittany is surprised, saying that she had no idea that the invitation had an expiration date. The guard rudely repeats once again that they will not let them through and their invitation is no longer valid. Alistair suggests not arguing with the guards and just waiting near the entrance to the hall. The girl assumes that everything is in order with the invitations and most likely someone bribed the guards so that they would not let them through. Alistair agrees with her guesses and asks her to guess who exactly might be behind this. Brittany suggests that it could be Tony, the same man from the Ice Sky sect, adding that he has been trying to hit on Vanessa for a long time, and the main character humiliated him. Little Shani asks Alistair if they will be allowed inside, and he, patting her on the head, asks her not to worry, because soon the one who will take them inside will appear. After some time, the same man who saw our heroes being attacked by robbers appears at the gate. Brittany turns out to be a little scared when she asks Alistair if he was really waiting for a man from the pure palace of heaven. The main character, without the slightest shadow of doubt, answers that this is exactly what he was waiting for. The girl explains that this is a first-class sect, which is much more powerful than flying clouds and the icy sky, and they also say that one of the 3 emperors of the upper system began his journey with this sect. Alistair agrees with her reasoning, also noting that the Black Dragon actually trained there, causing the girl's surprise because she does not understand how the main character knows the real name of the emperor. A man in a red robe notices our heroes and wonders why they look like they weren't allowed in. The man comes closer to our hero, introducing himself by the name Russell, saying that they met in a tavern, to which the main character thanks him for settling the situation. Russell notes that the main character's strength corresponds to the level of the free line, and this is a very good indicator, and also asks whether he will go to the auction. The main character reports that he wanted to be there, but the guards stopped him, saying that his invitation was no longer valid. The guards, watching everything that is happening, understand that it is better not to delay it and accuse Tony, a member of the Ice Sky sect, of sending them to certain death. Deciding not to aggravate the situation, they immediately run up to Russell and ask him for treatment because they didn't know that this stranger was his friend. Russell glances at them, declaring that this is unprecedented impudence, after which the ground begins to crack under him. The guards continue to beg for forgiveness because they did wrong, while an incredible aura and energy emanates from Russell, and he doesn't even move. The man declares that Tony is an incredible liar and a very petty person and then invites Alistair to follow him to the auction. While our heroes pass through the gate, the guards do not dare raise their heads, still continuing to kneel. Raising their heads, they begin to cough up blood as Russell's mere presence caused them a huge amount of damage. Finally, once inside the auction hall, a huge arena filled with people opens in front of our heroes. Russell decides to ask the main character what exactly he thinks about the auction hall. Alistair, in turn, decides to behave very delicately and says that first he wants to hear the master's thoughts. Russell says that in this hall there are 5 steps that correspond to the 5 elemental elements, and if activated, even those on the free line will instantly die. His bodyguards notice that their master has begun to better appreciate the details and very soon they will all be able to resist him together. The main character behaves confidently and very calmly says that Russell is mistaken because if activated, he will have time to take a couple of breaths. Such an answer quite surprises the man, as well as his bodyguards, forcing him to treat the main character with greater caution. Their conversation is interrupted by Tony appearing, calling the main character a bastard, because the existing tactics were personally developed by the head of the capital, while simultaneously trying to understand how exactly the main character was able to get into the auction. When Russell asks why he thinks this is nonsense, he does not answer that the main character allows himself to say all sorts of nonsense, and for some reason believes that there is a gap in the security system of the auction. Russell orders Tony not to open his mouth over trifles. If he himself does not know, then it is better to remain silent. Tony begins to bare his teeth, asking that he cannot contradict the pure palace of the Celestial Empire, and now even some crooks. He points his finger towards our main character, saying that he is a worthless person who only knows how to hide behind the backs of others. Russell immediately interrupts his insult with a loud cry, declaring that he should not dare to speak like that towards our protagonist. After which he launches several energy attacks towards Tony, wanting to teach him a lesson and put him in his place. The man covers his face with his hands, declaring that not only Russell has defenders. Tony is immediately covered by several guards who take the blow. Tony declares that he is going to teach this young man a lesson, and this does not concern Mr. Russell. Russell immediately launches several more energy attacks in their direction, declaring that they are acting very recklessly. The guards protecting Tony ask their master to stop because their reserve of strength is already at its limit. At this same second, it turns out that one of the attacks still managed to reach Tony and slightly hit him. After which Russell reminds them not to forget in the future that children should not interfere in adults' conversations. A follower of the Empress's sect and a follower of the Celestials intervene in their conversation and taunt Tony, saying that it is a pity that his beloved Vanessa did not see how he was dealt. Russell notices that their conversation with the main character is not over and he is very curious about the flaw in the security system of the auction hall. Alistair invites Russell to join him tomorrow, because the head of the capital will come to him at the guest temple, and there he will tell him everything. Such a statement shocks everyone present, as they cannot believe that the head of the capital himself will come to a meeting with a person they do not know. Even Brittany is completely delighted and once again tries to figure out who Alistair really is. Russell agrees to such an offer and offers to go to their place and wait there for the start of the auction. Once in the luxurious stands, the main character inspects the auction hall, realizing that the show is about to begin. After the sound signal, a huge flaming dragon appears in the center of the arena, which envelopes all the stands with its scream. Little Shani grabs the main character by the sleeve, saying that she is a little scared, but the dragon is very beautiful. After this, the daughter of the head of the capital, Vanessa, appears in the center of the arena and declares that everyone present has been waiting for this for a very long time and the auction will begin soon. All auction participants look with amazement at the main beauty of the capital, Vanessa, admiring her unsurpassed appearance. The girl announces that in the absence of her father, who is also the head of the capital, she will be in charge of holding the auction. The enthusiastic cries of the crowd do not at all object to the fact that she will be the curator of the auction. Ice Sky member Tony immediately orders his guards to finish off the freaks who are screaming at his beloved, and the guards only think that their master is a fool. At the same moment, the golden dragon in the center of the arena opens its mouth, revealing the first lot to all auction participants. Vanessa announces that the first lot of this auction will be a mysterious rare metal plate with a starting price of 100,000 baht. Tony immediately decides to show off in front of Vanessa, offering his price of 500,000 baht. Unexpectedly for all auction participants, someone names the amount of 1.5 million baht. This person turns out to be Brittany, who is trying to understand why Mr. Alistair asked her to raise the price. When the girl asks why he doesn't announce the price himself, the main character explains that his hands hurt, and when he orders Brittany to raise the rates. Vanessa, watching her, begins to freak out, realizing that she sees in front of her the very woman who took the bracelet she liked. Tony at this time is trying to understand where our protagonist has so much impudence to try to compete with him in wealth. He raises 2 fingers in the air with a new bid of 2 million baht in an attempt to beat Alistair's bid. The main character tells Brittany not to give up and keep raising the price by asking Russell for advice on the price. The man says that this rare metal plate could well be valued at 3 million. Hearing his suggestion, Brittany immediately raises 3 fingers and places a bet of 3 million baht. Vanessa begins a 3-second countdown, expecting that one of the auction participants will offer a higher price. Without waiting for a higher insert, she announces that the lot in the form of a plate will be sold and gives it to the main character. After which Alistair opens his vault in the form of a ring, and the golden dragon begins to absorb the required amount of money from it. Tony decides to make fun of our main character by saying that he spent 3 million on a piece of metal. Some auction participants huddle together like a pack of jackals and also begin to mock, supporting this statement. Alistair smiles, saying that if some of those present have vision problems, he will help them see the truth. He begins to pour some of his energy into the plate, saying that inside it there is mithril, a very rare metal that fully justifies its price. By splitting the metal, he reveals that there was a first-class spiritual talisman inside. Other auction participants understand that this is a golden helper spirit talisman, and its price on the market is more than 100 million. This fact surprises even Russell, who could not imagine that there would be a talisman inside, and he is also trying to understand how the main character managed to understand that he was inside. Meanwhile, Vanessa presents the second auction lot of a sword, which was cast from heavenly metal during the awakening and lay in the Sect of buried balls for 30 years. Having seen the second lot, Russell asks Alistair how much he will value this sword, and the main character says that he is not a great expert on swords and will give him a maximum of 10 million. Wealthy auction participants begin to raise bids in increments of 1 million, gradually increasing the price of the lot. At that very second, they are interrupted by Brittany, who immediately raises the bet to 20 million. Tony immediately interrupts the bet by saying that he will not lose to the main character, and meanwhile his bodyguards ask him to calm down. At the same moment, Brittany raises her hand again, making a new bet of 25 million. The guards and the elder of the city watching everything that is happening say that the youth are very frivolous and our main character is a fool if they openly provoke the Temple of the Ice Sky. The elder says that he conducted an investigation and did not find out exactly how Alistair got to the capital, and where he came from, but it is clear to him that he is not a fool. Tony again wants to increase the rate, but his subordinate dissuades his master, saying that this sword is not worth that kind of money and it is better to give it up. He immediately pushes his bodyguard away, saying that our main character dared to treat him with contempt, and he cannot just leave it like that. After Tony again raises the bet to 27 million, Alistair decides to calm down and give up the sword to him. Other auction participants look at our protagonist with surprise. I understand that he decided not to raise the price, and this looks very strange. Tony takes the sword he received, saying that others should not dare to compete with him, otherwise they risk greatly regretting it. Russell invites the main character to tell the truth, to which Alistair replies that he is not going to do this himself because it will hit Tony's pride even more. Russell decides to do it himself. He stands up and tells Tony that although the sword is good, it is not worth the money paid. He takes the sword out of its sheath, and sees that its blade is incredibly thin, and tries to figure out what he bought. Vanessa explains that this is a woman's sword, that's why they made it so thin and light, to which Tony expresses his complaint about what he should do with women's weapons now. All the high-ranking people present begin to laugh and say that the son of the head of the icy sky is a complete fool. At the same time, Vanessa presents the last lot of the auction in the form of an egg of an unknown beast, naming its starting price at 10 million baht. Only after seeing the egg does Russell understand that it was this lot that the capital invited all guests to the auction, and he needs to take a look if there is anything worthwhile in it. The man closes his eyes and begins to concentrate his energy to try to see the contents of the egg. Without thinking twice, everyone present at the auction also tries to scan the contents in order to clearly understand what they are fighting for. At the same second, the elder of the capital puts up a protective barrier, saying that auction participants are prohibited from trying to find out what is inside the egg. Russell, like everyone present, turns out to be very sad about the way things are going and thinks about what to do next. At the same moment, Alistair asks if he managed to find out what is inside the egg, to which Russell replies that his ability was reflected before it was possible to find out. The main character says that he is more than sure that there is something interesting inside the egg, but if he and Russell fight for it, he will not be able to get it. The man says that he could not see any clues, and if our protagonist is so confident in his abilities, then he will not participate in the fight for the lot. Vanessa announces the start of bidding for this lot and again announces the starting price of 10 million. Auction guests are not very willing to give that kind of money for the unknown contents of the egg and say that the auction owners are swindlers. Tony decides to prove himself again and is the first to place a bet of 11 million baht. Everyone participating in the auction understands that the son of the head of the Ice Sky Sect is behaving very recklessly, and will soon have his reputation at rock bottom. Tony grits his teeth, realizing the situation he has driven himself into. But his father ordered him to buy this egg and therefore he has no choice. Vanessa asks if anyone wants to raise the price while thinking that Tony has decided to drive himself into a loss. At the same moment, Alistair independently raises his hand, placing a bet of 50 million baht. Tony immediately interrupts him with a bet of 60 million, at the same time thinking that the main character has decided to compete with him in wealth. The main character again raises the bet to 70 million, saying that he does not want to waste his time. Vanessa begins a 3-second countdown, and at this time Tony is seized with panic because he does not dare to raise the bet. At this moment, Alistair decides to outbid his own bet by raising it by another 10 million. The enthusiastic screams of the auction participants immediately cover the entire arena because for the first time they see someone raising their own price, thereby humiliating Tony even more. Tony is in complete shock as Alistair continues to raise the stakes, gradually reaching 100 million. He is interrupted by Vanessa, who asks the gentleman not to raise his own price. Tony is clearly not going to back down, and raises the bet once again. And despair is clearly visible on his face because he did not expect such an outcome of events. Their fight with Alistair continues and in the end they remain the only contenders for this auction lot, reaching an amount of 300 million. Having reached such a colossal amount, Tony begins to laugh and wants to see how his opponent can pay 300 million. Russell asks him to calm down, saying that if the master does not believe in his own abilities, this does not mean that others do not have similar means. Tony begins to grind his teeth, and anger is clearly visible on his face because he is sure that the main character cannot have that kind of money. All the auction participants present also begin to doubt the solvency of our protagonist, remembering that last time the one who could not pay the amount was killed. Alistair says that since the situation is taking such a turn, he offers a deal that if he can still give 300 million, Tony will also be ready to risk his life. Vanessa adds that if the main character lied, then eternal shame awaits him, and he should think twice before risking his life. The main character asks the girl not to worry, emphasizing that for him the amount of 300 million is tiny and begins to give the money. At this moment, even among the guards, a dispute is unfolding about whether Alistair will have enough of the specified amount, and whether Tony will ultimately die. Meanwhile, Tony's face begins to slowly change and rage quickly gives way to fear and despair because he understands that Alistair has the entire amount. Being in a stalemate, he orders his 2 bodyguards to immediately attack and kill the main character. Vanessa manages to notice all this, trying to warn the gentleman, and they say that such behavior is unacceptable during the auction. Russell grins, telling Alistair that he has again predicted his opponent's actions and orders his guards to protect them. They repel attackers without any problems since they are tens of times stronger than them. At this point, the main character has finished paying for the auction lot, and says that it is his opponent's turn. The audience begins to discuss whether Alistair will actually be able to take the life of the young master of the Ice Sky Temple. Meanwhile, Tony is in shock. I don't understand how Russell's guards managed to catch it, and did they really foresee everything in advance? His reasoning is immediately interrupted by the main character, who in the blink of an eye appears in front of him, saying that the dead do not need answers. High-ranking participants and representatives of noble families ask Alistair to come to his senses, because with such actions he is insulting the temple of the Ice Sky. The main character immediately orders them to shut up if they do not want to go to the next world and draws a line right under their feet, cutting through the stone floor. After which he looks at Tony with a grin and says that every self-respecting man should keep his word. He is immediately seized by a fit of rage, and he holds sharp steel needles in his hands, saying that the main character has a few moments left to live. At the same second, Tu does not attack the main character by launching a shower of steel spikes at him, but Alistair manages to repel them by putting up a protective barrier. He takes one of the steel needles in his hand, saying that attacking without warning is very mean and he wants to teach him a lesson on how to use the spikes. After these words, with a slight movement of his hand, he sends the steel needle flying with incredible speed, which pierces right through Tony's head. Everyone present and simultaneously watching this confrontation is shocked and cannot believe their eyes. They, including our main character, look at the corpse of the young master of the Ice Sky Sect lying on the floor, bleeding. At the same time, without wasting a second, Alistair removes the storage ring from his finger, saying that after so many battles the sword has returned to him. Tony's bodyguards immediately rush to the attack, wondering how the main character dared to kill their master, and also that the Temple of the Ice Sky will not forget this. The protagonist immediately takes the sword he bought earlier from Tony's ring, saying that he doesn't want to dirty his own hands about them. Having drawn his blade, he makes several powerful and smooth movements, cutting through the air, and with it the guards. Standing in a winning stance, and holding that same blade in front of him, he asks all the visitors to the capital present if there are anyone else who wants to argue with him. Vanessa understands that this commotion needs to be ended as soon as possible, says that the auction is declared closed and asks everyone to leave. At the exit from the auction hall, Russell asks the main character whether he can cope with the Temple of the Ice Sky, because they will most likely cause him a lot of trouble. Meanwhile, the elder of the capital, together with the daughter of the city leader, are discussing how best to resolve the situation and decide to wait until tomorrow. At the same moment, somewhere in the Temple of the Ice Cloud Sect, its head and part-time Father Tony orders all troops to go to the capital. Also, the head of the Thundercloud Sect and Ray's father orders his troops to also go to the capital and avenge his son's death. In the evening of the same day, the main character looks at the egg he bought at auction, marveling at how it could appear in this world outside the three spheres. He pours a little of his energy into the egg, they say, so that it gets to know its owner before it has time to form and transform. After which he places him in the vault ring, saying that his time has not yet come, but soon he will definitely play his role. Minding my own business, he hears a strange rustling outside the window and immediately realizes that most likely someone is watching him. Without thinking twice, he, using his spiritual energy, decides to attract the one who is hiding outside the window, saying that he should be more careful. Having broken a window frame on her way, a red-haired girl in a ninja costume begins to fly in his direction, clearly not expecting such a turn of events. In flight, the girl manages to regroup and tries to deliver a powerful kick to our hero. These efforts are not enough, and our protagonist, without making much effort, grabs the girl flying towards him and presses her to the wall. I clearly guess who is hiding under the mask. He asks the girl why Vanessa was looking for the company of a man in the dead of night, and whether she is afraid of the consequences. A ninja girl, whose appearance very much resembles the daughter of the head of the capital, in her thoughts is trying to understand how he recognized her. Without thinking twice, Alistair rips off her mask, under which Vanessa actually turns out to be, and at the same time I ask her for what purpose she came to his chambers. The girl explains that she didn't know how strong our main character was, so she became curious about how he would act if he was in trouble. Alistair says that she doesn't need to worry about some two tiny sects because the capital itself will help him deal with them. When asked by Vanessa why on earth should the capital help him, he replies that she herself came to him at night, and it was better for her to leave quickly before she brought on even more problems. The girl, experiencing incredible excitement, asks why he is talking to her like that, because she came of her own free will to help. The main character says that she doesn't care about Tony's death, but doesn't care about his killer, and all this together seems very strange to him. A clearly dissatisfied Vanessa explains that she never liked Tony, and was just an arrogant and impudent lout trying to show off his dignity. Alistair presses the girl against the wall, making her blush even more and asking who she liked in this case, and if she doesn't answer this question, then she can leave because there won't be another chance. Vanessa is very embarrassed. They say that the main character treats Brittany well and because of this her heart breaks, so she thinks that she has fallen in love. Having heard her answer, the main character grabs the girl in his arms, and says that in this case she will stay with him for the night. The girl, not even having time to understand what is happening, does not have time to say a word, and a thought only flashes through her head about whether everything is developing very quickly. He throws the girl onto the bed, towering over her and looking straight into her eyes. At this moment, a slight silence hangs between them, and the atmosphere becomes very romantic. Vanessa continues to look at our main character, afraid to say a word, while her heart begins to beat at an incredible speed, and all she thinks about is how exciting it is to part with what she has kept for more than 20 years. Closing her eyes for a moment, waiting for Alistair to take the first step, she looks to the side and sees how our main character has simply fallen asleep. She is immediately seized by shock, which fades very quickly, and she only thinks about how decent our protagonist is, because she lies so close, and he does not allow himself too much. The next morning, Alistair wakes up to the fact that Vanessa will be there, and says that it's time to get up because her father will soon arrive in the capital. He says that it's not for nothing that Vanessa is called the first beauty of the capital because she is incredibly charming, causing the girl to blush very much and cover her face with her hands. He also adds that he has a plan to cope with two sects who want to take revenge on him and asks the girl to get some materials for him. Joyful Vanessa, having received the list of necessary things, immediately goes in search of them, running out of the room and not noticing Brittany standing next to her. The girl is somewhat surprised why the lady left Alistair's room and then informs him that the elders of the two sects are already on their way to the capital. The main character promises to greet them and orders the girl to stay at the hotel and protect Shani because she is an unusual child. After some time, Vanessa, having obtained the necessary materials, together with the elder of the capital, stand waiting for our protagonist. Alistair explains that he asked Vanessa to bring the elder to look at something and then begins to process the materials using magical energy. The elder immediately tries to protect his mistress, the protagonist, to stop, because even the best craftsmen on the mainland do not undertake to process these materials, and he is at great risk. And the main character asks not to worry about anything, while simultaneously controlling a powerful violet flame inside which contains the previously collected materials. The elder can't believe his eyes, wondering how he managed to melt the 7-color metal and heavenly wood so quickly. Looking at everything that is happening, he also says that in the entire capital you cannot find a second person with such forging skills as our protagonist. A few minutes later, the molten materials merge into an elegant golden armor, and the main character is happy that he managed to create armor for his puppet, which he will call impenetrable armor. The elder and Vanessa cannot believe their eyes because for ordinary masters this process takes several months and in appearance this armor has surpassed the 9th rank. They see the incredible beauty and elegance of the armor, and the main character corrects them, saying that they are mistaken because its quality exceeds the 3rd rank. He also adds that he is aware of the elder's skills in the art of forging and, if he agrees to one condition, he will grant the capital a method of creating armor. Alistair explains that he wants to ask the elder to use his innate skill of deduction to determine fate. Vanessa interrupts him, saying that she also has deduction skills and can tell him about fate herself, and there is no need to ask the elder. The main character says that the elder has the power to show him not only his fate, but also tell him about the fate of the entire continent. The elder begins to doubt, realizing that the offer is very profitable and he has difficult work ahead of him, because the mainland is very huge. Alistair decides to allay the elder's doubts by providing him with a scroll that describes the method of making armor. He immediately accepts the scroll as a sign of gratitude, saying that the main character is a man of honor, and he greatly appreciates his nobility. The elder agrees to the deal, beginning to pour his spiritual energy into special talismans that will help him look into the fate of all things. He concentrates spiritual energy into a huge sphere, saying that time will speed up hundreds of times and the main character should carefully notice everything that interests him. The main character closes his eyes and in his thoughts realizes that he is curious to look at only 4 places: the Wang Sect, the capital, the pure palace of the heavenly kingdom, and the golden sphere in which the emperor is sealed. After he peers into the emperor's fate, the elder immediately interrupts the ritual and begins coughing up blood. Alistair helps him move, explaining that he spent too much energy, but in a couple of days he will definitely recover and get back on his feet. While he is providing first aid to the elder, Russell visits them and says that he heard a noise and decided to check what was happening. The main character explains that he asked the elder to reveal to him the fate of the mainland and he lost consciousness after using up a lot of strength. Russell says that he is a very good person since he thinks not only about his own fate, but about the fate of all people and the continent, in particular. Alistair says that his fate is not so great because he is doing this for his own selfish purposes, and even looked at how things are in the pure palace of heaven. At the same moment, their conversation is interrupted by a strange black energy, which begins to take the form of a person and emit a very creepy and disgusting laugh. A few moments later, the head of the capital, Burton, appears in front of them and greets the 2 young heroes. The 3 of them sit down at the same table, and the head of the capital asks Alistair if he knows what kind of trouble he is in and that he is being hunted by 2 sects. The main character says that this is nothing for him, and also states that he can help Burton overcome the free line. The head of the capital finds himself in incorruptible shock and asks the protagonist how he knows that he cannot overcome the milestone. Alistair says that he has his own methods and a smart person does not resort to hints to simply answer yes or no. The head of the capital, Burton, expresses his disagreement, saying that although the main character has a sharp mind, he is still too young. The protagonist crosses two fingers asking the head for permission to try, and then they will all know how things really are. He runs his fingers over some key points of concentration of spiritual power, and notices some destabilization in the paths of their movement. Alistair says that the three areas of disharmony created when a chapter has reached its peak are like the narrow neck of a bottle that prevents it from rising higher. Burton immediately changes his face, asking the protagonist how to fix this because the two elders of the Ice Sky and Storm Cloud sects are already on their way. Alistair says that both sect leaders are on the free line and both have the power to kill him, so he wants to borrow the burning desert. He also adds that revenge for his sons will most likely be just a pretext, and in fact they are interested in the burning desert, and now they personally headed to the capital. Burton is quite surprised that Alistair knows about the burning desert, and asks what his plan is. The main character says that he will help Burton overcome the milestone, and in return he will give him a burning desert. But the head of the capital decides to clarify what will happen to the heads of the sect. Alistair answers without the slightest doubt that he will enter the burning desert with them. The head of the capital, Burton, understands that the main character is not joking, but still decides to ask if he knows that going there is pure suicide. Alistair says he will be fine and asks Burton to use the great array of the 5 elements. After some time, our heroes find themselves in the auction hall, standing next to a huge stone slab with an image of a dragon. Alistair decides to start the ritual and, concentrating a huge amount of his energy, begins to pour it into the seal located on Earth. The head of the capital, Burton, watching what is happening, tries to understand how the main character managed to activate the great array because only he could do it. He begins to concentrate, realizing that there is no time for thinking and he can no longer control it. Russell says that he has been interested in the array for a very long time and asks permission to try to break through its defenses. The guy concentrates a huge amount of his energy in his palm and tries to deliver a powerful blow, trying to break through the array. His attempt is unsuccessful and a huge surge of energy throws his body to the side, but he manages to regroup and avoid falling to the ground. Russell says that the power and strength of the array is breathtaking, to which Alistair replies that it is very good, but like everything, it has flaws. He asks Russell and Burton to carefully observe what is happening, and comes almost close to the wall of the massif. Vanessa asks the main character to be careful, and her father thinks about the fact that his daughter should have gotten married a long time ago, and, apparently, she really liked Alistair. The main character enters the barrier saying that the array cannot envelop him, demonstrating to everyone that the energy revolves around his body. Everyone present is in complete shock, and the head of the capital, Burton, thinks that his array has lost power. Alistair extends his hand saying that there is a weakness in the array and asks the head to come with him and look at it. Although Burton has doubts, he understands that if his own array breaks him, then people and all his subordinates will laugh at him. He also turns to Vanessa asking her to follow them, to which the head of the capital does not immediately have time to react, but still tries to dissuade his daughter. Without thinking twice, the girl immediately obeys Alistair's order and throws herself straight into the wall of energy, successfully passing through it. Alistair uses one finger from his divine eye to cut the array, causing it to dissipate. At the same second, a huge purple palm begins to move towards him, emitting an eerie and deadly aura, which at the last moment stops right in front of Alistair's face. Burton says that the main character stole his beloved daughter from him, managed to unravel the array, and also stop the palm of the head, thereby recognizing his power. He asks if the main character can do him a favor and cover up the shortcoming of the array, to which Alistair replies that it can be completely corrected. The head of the capital, with a smile on his face and childish delight, hearing such wonderful news, asks Alistair to do it, saying that he will be immensely grateful to him. Alistair asks Burton not to rush, suggesting that he first wait for the heads of the two sects because he knows that the entrance to the burning desert is located right here. The head begins to laugh, saying that there is nothing in this world that our main character does not know about, and completely agrees with him, and decides to wait for the heads of the sects. Finally, Alistair decides to turn to Russell, saying that if misfortune happens to the palace under heaven, He will definitely need to save his life because he is the future of the palace. Russell hands him a green sign saying that this is the highest order, and if anything happens, let him show him in a clean palace and find him. Alistair accepts the order, saying that the day the black dragon will attack will definitely come, and he should be careful. After these words, the race leaves, and our heroes remain waiting for the two heads of sects, who are rushing at full speed to the capital. After some time, the silence is interrupted by two old men who find themselves directly above the heads of our heroes. The head of the Thundercloud sect decides not to stand on ceremony for long conversations, and immediately rushes to attack our main character with his fists. Vanessa tries to warn Alistair, saying that he is improving his fighting physique and he should be as careful as possible. Our protagonist and the head of the Thundercloud sect collide with their fists, from which a huge amount of energy begins to emanate. After such a crushing blow, the main character's strength is not enough, and although he does not fall to the ground, he bounces several meters back. The head of the Thundercloud sect decides to slow down the pressure on me and continues to put pressure, once again trying to attack Alistair. At the last moment, the head of the capital, Burton, manages to push him away, concentrating terrible dark energy in his palms. Using his palms and this energy, he forms a shield with which he manages to repel the lightning attack of the attacker. The head of the Thundercloud sect asks how Burton has the nerve to go against two sects at the same time. He immediately invites the other head of the Sky sect to join forces and settle old scores and new conflicts with Burton. They say that he is in complete solidarity. The two old men, joining forces, simultaneously attack Burton, not giving him the opportunity to breathe. Being at the limit of his capabilities and repelling the attacks of two opponents, the head of the capital does not understand how Alistair was going to fight them because they are incredibly strong. The protagonist decides not to stand aside and help Burton by concentrating his energy on the tip of his finger and releasing a powerful beam of energy. The fast-flying cloud of magic almost reaches the head of the Thundercloud sect, but he manages to dodge at the last moment. He also finds himself extremely surprised at how this young man knows his weak point. Meanwhile, Burton opens a portal to the burning desert and invites the chapters to enter it because in 3 hours it will close for the next 100 years. The old people immediately decide that this is just a trick and an attempt to lure them into a trap, but the main character, without hesitation, jumps into the portal. I notice the young man's action. They, being sure that this is really the entrance to the burning desert, rush after him. The head of the capital, Burton, looking at the reckless actions of our protagonist, understands that trouble awaits him. At that very second, after the heads of the sects and Alistair, Vanessa rushes into the portal, and her father does not have time to stop her. Meanwhile, in the burning desert, two old men stand opposite our protagonist, waiting for the battle to begin. After Vanessa passes through the portal, the head of the Thundercloud sect immediately rushes to attack her. At the last moment before the blow, the girl manages to use the hidden talisman and put up a protective barrier. This turns out to be not enough to hold back the onslaught of the head of the sect, and Alistair personally rushes to the aid of the defenseless girl. The onslaught of the head of the Thundercloud sect turns out to be not so weak, causing the main one to fly to the side after the blow. The old man with sparkling eyes and complete self-confidence says that the young man has little strength and should not pretend to be a hero who will save everyone. The protagonist at this time lies on the sand, and drops of blood flow down his lip, and he replies that if the head of the sect kills them, then there will be no one to sacrifice. The old man is quite surprised by the fact that Alistair knows about the sacrifices that need to be made as a gift. The head of the Sky sect suggests that Burton told him about this and, according to rumors, 2 sacrifices are needed to open it. After all, this has been the case since the time of the most cruel 9th Emperor. While the heads of the sects are discussing what to do next and how to enter, Vanessa, taking advantage of the moment, tries to find out if everything is okay with our protagonist. He asks the girl to remain silent and pretend as if they are in a difficult situation, because all this time he was simply pretending to be wounded. Alistair tries to provoke the sect leaders and says that if the storm cloud intended to kill him, then the second victim should have been the head of the ice cloud. The head of the thundercloud who attacked him is indignant, declaring that the young man should not dare to slander him, and his colleague says that he is simply trying to start enmity between them. He also says that the desert will remain open for a short time, and they need to first find what they came here for. Also, the head of the Sky sect grins, saying that it was in vain that the girl followed them because, by a fortunate coincidence, she would just become the second victim. Alistair immediately grabs Vanessa's hand and decides to run away from here as quickly as possible, moving in an unknown direction. The two sect leaders immediately rush after them, saying that even though this is an endless desert, they still won't be able to hide anywhere. Running away from 2 chapters, Alistair uses his blood to draw a mysterious rune in the air and begins to pour some of his energy into it, after which he directs the rune into the air, starting to increase its size, and orders Vanessa to get out of this place as soon as possible. At the same second, right in front of the faces of the 2 old men, a huge tail of an incomprehensible creature appears from the sand. The heads of the sect are shocked that somewhere in the middle of the desert there is a demonic creature hidden that apparently guards what they are looking for. The head of the Thundercloud sect decides that he is capable of defeating the mysterious beast and decides to enter into battle with it. Watching all this, Vanessa decides to ask the main character if this evil spirit is his trump card, because apparently she will not be able to cope with the 2 elders. After Alistair's words asking the girl to wait a little longer, several more huge tails appear from the ground, forcing the elder of the icy sky to also enter into battle. One of the elders still guesses what type of creature these undead are, and remembers what he read in one of the books about the 8-tailed Scorpio. Meanwhile, Burton, who is watching what is happening standing outside the portal, says that the ancestors forbade entering the hot desert precisely so that Scorpio would hibernate, and their affairs are very bad. The capital elder asks the head if they can enter the desert and help his daughter, to which Burton replies that 4 people is the maximum for the array. He also adds that at the moment all they can hope for is the main character who can protect himself and his daughter. Meanwhile, the elders' battle continues, and the scorpion shows its full body and head and attacks fiercely. The head of the Thundercloud sect was inflamed with rage, and the spirit of battle said that he was not going to lose to some mindless undead. Fighting with the scorpion, the elder understands that if the price of all this had not been a sacrifice, he would have sent Alistair to the next world a long time ago. Vanessa, meanwhile, asks the main character if Scorpio will be able to see the 2 elders, to which she receives the answer that this must happen, otherwise it will be very difficult for them. At the same time, the head of the Thundercloud sect uses the most powerful techniques that he has in his arsenal and, with the help of a lightning discharge, repels the terrible monster. I notice that our main character and the girl are trying to escape. He orders his friend to grab them because what they came here for is most important. Leaving the scorpion behind, they give chase as the Stormcloud Elder begins to rain down powerful blows on Alistair again. At the same moment, the head of the Ice Sky sect grabs Vanessa, ordering Alistair to surrender immediately, otherwise not only he, but also this sweet girl will suffer. The main character replies that it is not in his rules to abandon a fragile lady in trouble and gives the opportunity to the Elder of the Thundercloud to grab him. The old man uses his sect's secret technique called Thunder Bonds and binds our protagonist. Having grabbed our heroes, both elders move through the burning desert in search of some mysterious place for which they went here. After some time, the head of the Thundercloud sect begins to rejoice as they find that very place in the form of a huge monument towering into the sky. This mysterious monument turns out to be the staff of the Nirvana of Opposites, and it was this that the 2 elders had been looking for a long time. The head of the Ice Sky sect says that Emperor Chi himself installed it, and finally he had the opportunity to examine the thing left by the greatest. He brings his hand to the staff and feels how it, with an incredible thirst for blood, begins to suck the life energy out of him. The elder understands that this pull is more powerful than the horror emanating from the scorpion, and it is not without reason that the emperor who left him here is considered the most bloodthirsty of all. At the same second, the head of the Thundercloud sect attacks his friend from behind, and he does not even have time to react to his attack and crashes straight into the staff. Having touched the monument with his whole body, it is as if he is sucked inside and the staff begins to absorb all his vital energy, causing him to experience incredible pain. Standing on the storm cloud says that even years later, his friend did not have enough time to gain his wits and understand that if he did not die, then how could they share the staff among themselves? A few moments later, the monument completely drains the body of the Ice Sky Elder, leaving only a gnawed skeleton. Vanessa, watching everything that is happening, tells Alistair that they need to get out of here as soon as possible, and he asks the girl to go first since he still has unfinished business. The main character, looking at the elder, says that the battle with the scorpion has battered him greatly, and which of the two will emerge victorious is still unknown. The head of the Thundercloud sect charges up his most powerful Thunder Fist and says that even with half the power, he can defeat it. At the same second, Alistair opens his vault ring from which the sword that he took from Tony at the auction begins to appear, as well as the hand that holds it. After which a puppet is shown that our protagonist made while still in the sect, Van, which is armed with the same blade. The elder of the Thundercloud declares that a simple puppet will never be able to compare with him in strength in his life and delivers a powerful blow to its body. To the elder's surprise, his blow does not cause any damage at all, since under his clothes the puppet is dressed in impenetrable armor, which Alistair also made quite recently. Taking advantage of the old man's confusion, the puppet delivers several powerful and crushing blows with his sword, cutting through the elder's flesh. The head of the Thundercloud sect falls to his knees, starting to bleed and realizing that he is not in the best position. The main character explains that from the very beginning he pretended to be a weakling so that the head of the Thundercloud sect would betray his friend, and then force him to fight with a puppet whose armor was specially prepared against him. After which Alistair declares that only he will get the staff that the elder so coveted and sends it towards the pedestal with a powerful kick. The staff accepts another sacrifice, but Alistair realizes that he is much more bloodthirsty and wants even more offerings. When the girl asks what is happening, the main character replies that the legend says that the emperor who created him was extremely hot-tempered and practically a monster. Vanessa begins to worry that they will be stuck here and will not be able to do anything to oppose the ancient legend, and the staff will also absorb their bodies as a sacrifice. Alistair asks her not to worry, because what can quench the thirst for the staff is already here, and a second later the huge paws of Scorpio grab it from under the ground. The main character asks the girl to pay attention to the fact that the demonic scorpion has already completely absorbed the ferocity of the staff, and now the staff wants to leave. But the scorpion will not allow this. The protagonist declares that he is not going to give someone what he wants so badly, so he rushes to attack the scorpion, ordering Vanessa not to move and not to come too close. He delivers a powerful blow directly to the monster's head, realizing that he is very exhausted after the battle with two elders and defeating him will not be difficult. Standing on top of the staff, Alistair asks him to obey and follow him, because he won't give him a second try and will leave him in the clutches of the scorpion. Hearing the approving glow from the main staff, the hero takes out the egg he purchased at the auction, saying that it's time for the one sitting inside to come into the world. At this moment, the head of the capital Burton and the elder, standing outside the portal, see how it begins to emit a golden glow and slowly close. The elder of the capital wonders why the head's daughter didn't run away, because the head of the Thundercloud and Icy Sky sect was already dead. Burton explains that the second ban of the burning desert was activated because what hatched from the egg was so terrible that the portal closed itself. The elder remembers that when he woke up he found a strange message under his pillow that was addressed to the head of the city, and gives him a small piece of paper. The note Burton is holding says that Alistair will borrow his daughter and then return her safe and sound. The head of the capital is amazed that this young man managed to plan everything from the very beginning, and how such a dashing person can even exist in reality. At this time, the shell of the egg containing the mysterious creature begins to slowly crack and a powerful monkey appears in front of our heroes. Alistair declares that he is now her master and asks to take this staff into her hands because now it belongs to her. The monkey touches the staff with its paw, after which it shrinks under the influence of her force, decreasing in size. At the same moment after the staff passes into the hands of another owner, a protective spirit is activated, which immediately rushes to attack the monkey. After the main character orders to destroy him, the monkey, without the slightest hesitation, using his strength and the power of this demonic weapon, destroys the phantom in an instant. Vanessa manages to notice that from birth this creature has the level of a free boundary, and its strength is incredibly amazing. Alistair also does not forget to remove their storage rings from the bodies of the deceased elders, saying that what they so craved for decades was given to him. After which the main character orders the monkey to take the hot desert into his staff, which can also serve as a storage facility. At this moment, Vanessa asks how they can get out of here because the portal has closed, to which the main character replies that they can get out using a mysterious dimension and asks the monkey to hit the ground. After the impact, a passage opens between the worlds, which begins to emit a colossal amount of energy, destroying the place in which they are now located. Moving towards the portal, an ominous eye appears on their way, which forces our heroes to stop and return the staff to it. Realizing that their affairs are bad, Alistair takes out a small black cauldron from his pocket, which instantly increases in size. Having managed to hide inside the cauldron, the ominous dark eye emits a powerful beam of cursed energy, which rushes towards our heroes. The cauldron manages to protect Alistair and Vanessa, but the girl still experiences a powerful overload from which her body cannot withstand. Still, they manage to survive, and the cauldron, along with our heroes, falls into the dimension between worlds. When Alistair asks if everything is okay, Vanessa replies that she was a little injured, but if he had not managed to use the boiler, she would probably have died. The protagonist explains that they were attacked by the spirit of the Emperor's patron, and the pot was left here by one of his heirs, and only he is able to retain his energy. He also asks his new servant to throw the staff in any direction and use it as a support to find a way out. The monkey throws it, increasing in size, and since the laws of physics do not work here, they begin to move and slowly fly through space in search of a way out. While they are looking for a way out, the main character offers the girl to heal her wounds and uses several bats combined with magical purple energy. He merges them together and begins to redirect the energy into the girl's body, which gradually begins to restore her spiritual energy, as well as her reserve of strength. Alistair asks the girl not to move and give her body time to return to normal, after which Vanessa begins to meditate in the lotus position. Without wasting time, our main character decides to check what is in the rings of the two elders he defeated, which contain a certain amount of money, as well as something interesting. He discovers a pill inside that allows him to raise the level of the milestone and advance from the cycle to free, and invites Vanessa to take it. The girl says that her father already brought her one but recommended that she take it without thinking, because if she fails to increase the level of consequences it will be difficult to imagine. Alistair says that since he is here, he will definitely help the girl and everything will work out. The only question is whether she has the courage to try. Vanessa continues to doubt, remembering her father's words, because if she doesn't succeed, then she can give up on further attempts to develop her strength. The main character already wants to stop insisting, but the girl, gathering her strength into a fist and expressing steadfastness, says that she agrees and asks to help her reach the free line. Alistair agrees and, placing a piece of his energy into the pill, begins the ritual, after which the girl must move to a new level. After completely absorbing the pill, Vanessa finds herself at a loss because she did not believe that she would succeed. Her body begins to exude a huge amount of energy, and she overcomes the free line. The main character asks the girl to follow him further because on his way she will be able to see even more wonderful things and events. Vanessa says that she is still worried about her father, who was left alone to manage the whole city, and will worry about her. Alistair asks the girl to be calm, touching her face and saying that all the elders who threatened the capital are dead and nothing is stopping her from following him. He also complements his answer with the fact that the Battle of the Mainland will begin soon, and he has too little time to find good and loyal allies. Meanwhile, moving in the space between worlds, they notice a passage into their world and decide not to miss the opportunity to get out. Having climbed to the surface and walked around, they realize that they are near the temple of the Wang sect. Going inside, they are met by the head of the sect, as well as the elders. I rejoice at the return of the Viceroy, because he was absent for quite a long time. Looking at all his friends, Alistair notices that they have all increased their level of milestone from steel much stronger before the upcoming battle. Sect leader Alana states that he returned just in time because they need to discuss strategy, and how they will participate in the Battle of the Mainland. At the same moment, Elder Mistletoe notices a girl standing next to our main character and decides to ask who she is. Alistair explains that his companion is the daughter of the head of the capital, Mrs. Vanessa, who will act as their secret weapon in the upcoming battle. Looking at all this, Alana thinks in her head about how he managed to lure the capital's daughter into his bonds. The girl also decides to bring the governor up to date by saying that their opponents from the Scarlet Sky Palace and the Evil Fort have very strong fighters under their command. The main character asks Alana not to worry and is preparing for the upcoming battle, because soon he will completely understand. After some time, our heroes gather together for the Battle of the Mainland, and the first person they meet there is the head of the Scarlet Sky Palace along with his brothers. The middle brother, whose name is Rudy, turns to the younger brother and says that he needs to remain vigilant because after defeating the Wang sect they will be able to enter Dauha. The younger brother Isaac thanks him, saying that he is also worried about the fort evil spirits because they are very strong and can compete. Meanwhile, the head of the fort of evil spirits named Austin, having gathered the 7 greatest evil spirits from his guard, is also preparing for battle. Mistress Alana evaluates her opponents, realizing that this time they will have a difficult test because each of them is incredibly strong. Her thoughts are interrupted by the sudden appearance of the battle leader of the mainland, who asks everyone to be quiet because now she will announce the rules. The presenter says that each of the 3 sides will choose 10 representatives who will enter the secret kingdom where they will hunt monsters, and based on the number of those defeated, 20 applicants will be selected. The girl also notes the 3 most important points that should be remembered, because violation of them will lead to loss. The first rule of the mainland battle concerns time, because its duration is limited and the participant is given only half a day to complete it. The second rule equalizes the participants by allowing them to use only weapons, and other items in the form of vault ring pill talismans are prohibited. The third rule states that competitors can leave and enter the secret realm during the competition, but if they are replaced, they will be disqualified. The presenter understands that all the participants have gathered a long time ago and are ready to begin the test, asks the heads of the sects to come out and choose their subordinates. The girl pays attention to the Wang sect and turns to Mrs. Alana, saying that apparently she does not have enough people. Alistair replies that 6 of them will be enough to win the battle, which causes hatred among everyone present, especially the leader of the evil fort. Using a secret technique, the protagonist realizes that the head of the evil spirits is actually a fake, and he becomes interested in where the real one is. The head of the Scarlet Sky sect addresses the protagonist, saying that the younger generation is distinguished by politeness, and they are very extravagant and careless. Alistair replies that only the head of the Scarlet Sky is ignorant here, and if he dares to speak out against him, it will not end well. The head of the Scarlet Sky named Steve immediately boils over from such impudence, and orders one of his warriors to attack the main character. Alistair repels this attack with incredible ease with a slight movement of his palm. They say that such childish spitting will not harm him. This makes the head of the Scarlet Sky sect even more angry, and he asks if Alistair wants to start a war between the sets with such actions. Mistress Alana immediately stands up for her subordinate, saying that her sect is not afraid and is always ready to fight back. Their squabble is immediately interrupted by the presenter, who asks everyone to calm down and quickly draw lots. The head of the Scarlet Sky sect, Steve, decides to draw lots first in order to find out exactly where his subjects will go. He breaks the pill and a mysterious symbol representing the earth appears from it, indicating that the participants from the Scarlet Sky Palace side will go to the secret realm under the sign of the earth. The remaining sect heads also draw lots, and it turns out that the evil fort will go to the secret realm under the sign of the sky, and the Wang sect will go under the sign of fire. Having determined their roles in this competition, our heroes go to the secret kingdom in order to win the battle of the mainland. Having passed through the portal, our heroes find themselves in a strange and mysterious place that is inhabited by a huge number of living beings, and every centimeter is saturated with energy. Suddenly, the swordswoman Darshia is attacked from behind by a strange magical creature with red eyes blazing with hatred. Alistair manages to push her away, saying that he will now teach everyone present how to fight such monsters. Our main character dodges the swift attack of the enraged beast and begins to concentrate energy in his fingers for a counterattack. He imitates the movements of the blade with his palm and in one movement cuts the vital arteries on the monster's body. Alistair stands next to the lifeless body of the monster with his whole appearance personifying invincibility and self-confidence. All the elders present are amazed at how strong the governor is because he was able to finish off the monster with just one blow. The main character explains that all the monsters in the secret kingdom were transformed due to the influence of Dauha, but in fact their appearance does not reflect their strength at all. He also takes a crystal from the body of the defeated monster, and explains that they can be used to strengthen combat power. After such a fiery speech, our heroes begin to clear the dungeon, destroying the monsters they encounter along the way. In these short battles, the main character notices how much the power of all the elders, as well as the head of the Wang sect, has increased. Realizing that they can cope without him, Alistair informs Alana that he will leave further hunting for them, and he will have to leave for a while. In the form of her interest in where exactly he is going, the main character explains that their opponents in the form of the Scarlet Sky Palace and the Evil Fort are clearly up to something, and he wants to find out what exactly. The main character calls on a magic staff and, with its help, flies across the sky on reconnaissance in the company of Vanessa as he senses strange vibrations in the air. After some time, they notice a fleet of ships that clearly should not be here during the battle. Alistair decides to sneak onto the ship unnoticed, but as soon as he secretly finds himself on the deck, he stumbles upon a strangely dressed man and woman. The strangers, immediately frightened by the presence of strangers on their ship, do not have time to say a word before our protagonist knocks them out with a light blow to the head. When Vanessa asks why he did this, he replies that they need a disguise, as well as the absence of unnecessary witnesses, so the bodies need to be hidden somewhere, and their clothes taken away. After the girl has changed her clothes, he compliments her, emphasizing that she has a wonderful figure, and Vanessa asks him to behave more decently and not waste time. Remaining unnoticed on the ship, Alistair understands that this fleet belongs to the family of rulers, which is incredibly powerful, and most likely they ended up here at the invitation of the Scarlet Sky or the Fort of Evil. Examining everyone who is on the ship, Vanessa asks the main character why the men are dressed in such strange outfits and behave very stupidly. He explains that all the men subordinate to the family of rulers are actually eunuchs, and in order to get here, they all had something intimate cut off. Their conversation is interrupted by a girl who suddenly appears and turns to our protagonist and asks him how he dared to approach his mistress. Vanessa, not at a loss in the situation, covers for Alistair, saying that she sprained her ankle, and he managed to catch her and escort her. The stranger notices that they have never met before, to which Vanessa replies that she is new here and has not yet had time to introduce herself. The girl grabs her hands. I am very happy about this coincidence of circumstances, and invites her to go for a swim and ablution, to which Vanessa happily agrees. The stranger drags her along, and our heroine realizes that she is in a hopeless situation because she needs not to give herself and her disguise away. After some time, our heroes find themselves in baths, shrouded in a layer of thick steam in which there are a huge number of girls. The stranger asks Vanessa not to be shy, saying that nothing will work out with all these defective men even if the desire arises. The girl explains that all the men on this ship are just rumors, and also that they were very lucky with such a fate, after which she turns to Alistair and tells him not to stand there like a pillar and help his mistress wash herself. While the main character is busy massaging Vanessa, the stranger says that their ruler plans to choose a successor from two candidates, her and another girl. Vanessa continues to play her role, trying to gain confidence, and they say that since she is new, she will be happy to support the mistress in her endeavors. The girl says that her name is Mary, and from this day on Vanessa will be her sister, and must obey her in everything. Vanessa decides to find out what exactly their fleet is doing here, to which she receives the answer that a war is brewing between the Scarlet Sky Palace and the Wang Sect, and they will wait for the end of the conflict to benefit from it. Mary also adds that this time a powerful race of flying immortals will arrive at the battle and will help in the implementation of their plan. Having understood the essence of the situation, Alistair decides not to hesitate and, also trying to gain confidence, tells the girl that this is her chance to make a big contribution and beat her rival. He says that he accidentally heard how someone who called himself the head of evil spirits and the head of the family of flying clouds were planning to speak out against the ruler's sect and were preparing a conspiracy. Mary, with incredible enthusiasm, asks the main character if he is lying, because for such lies he will die. Alistair swears on his life that all this is the pure truth, and if she reports this to the mistress, a generous reward awaits her. The girl considers all the information received from the main character, who, in her opinion, is an ordinary slave, and decides that everything he said is true. She praises him for his good work, saying that when everything settles down, he will definitely receive a generous reward for his efforts. When asked by Vanessa if he really told her the truth, Alistair replies that it was all a pure lie and soon Mary will get into trouble. Meanwhile, the head of the sect of rulers named Lingfei asks his subordinate where she came up with such nonsense. Mary, who clearly received a scolding for her words, tries to justify herself, realizing that the words she told her mistress had some secret meaning and she was deceived. Having heard from her subordinate the words that all these were the words of a certain slave, she asks the second pretender to the throne to bring him here immediately. A blonde with white hair whose name is Judy gloats over her rival, realizing that she has completely lost the favor of the head. She says that she will carry out the order and immediately goes to the baths to find the slave who deceived Mary and punish him. Bursting into the bathhouse, with a loud cry, she asks everyone present where the slave with whom Mary was a few hours ago is. At that very second, our main character grabs her by the throat, ordering her to follow him because he has a lot of questions for this girl. Looking back at the voice of the main character, Judy realizes that Alistair is talking to her, the same guy who was at the auction and who killed Ray and Tony. After which the main character throws the girl towards Vanessa and tells her to listen and obey his every word. Judy, lying on the ground, begins to beg Mr. Alistair and Ms. Vanessa for mercy, promising to do whatever they say. The main character says that if he wanted her dead, she would have been dead a long time ago, but he not only saved her life, but also provided a huge service. It was thanks to him that the lady became disillusioned with Mary, and Judy's authority grew noticeably, for which the girl thanks him and asks what she needs to do. Alistair asks to take him to Lingfei and not to do anything stupid along the way because he has an important conversation with her. Judy agrees to these conditions, adding at the same time that most likely the mistress is already expecting his arrival. The protagonist asks the girl to be calm, because the merit to the ruler will remain with her on one condition, that they give him shoes that belong to the family of flying immortals. The girl explains that this will not be so easy to do, as this is their main jewel, and it is currently with George, and she is unlikely to be able to get it. Alistair begins to blackmail her, saying that he knows perfectly well what kind of relationship she is in, and if the ruler finds out, then she will not be well. The girl does not understand how our hero knows all the secrets of the world, but at the same time she decides to justify herself by saying that George poisoned her, so she had to cooperate with him. The main character says that he can deal with such trifling poison in an instant, and asks the girl to get back on her feet. He also compliments his answer by saying that later he will order what exactly she needs to do, but now he wants to talk to Mrs. Lingfei. Finding herself in front of the head, the girl asks Alistair how he ended up here, and that he should immediately lay out everything he knows. Our hero, surrounded on all sides by guards with sharp spears, says that there are too many people here for their private conversation. But Mrs. Lingfei rudely declares that this is not a hindrance, and with just one glance sends a powerful charge of energy towards our hero. Alistair manages to defend himself from the blow by saying that 17 years ago the head of the family of flying immortals had two disciples. A follower of one was called Jean, and the second was a girl. Before he could finish his sentence, Lingfei interrupts him, realizing that he is an unusual slave, and immediately orders all the guards to immediately leave the premises. As soon as they are alone, he continues his story by saying that the two fell in love with each other, but the head was against it, and at one point they left the mouth and founded their own. For a while, everything calmed down. After many years, having not found a worthy successor, the head found them and asked them to return. Jean and Lingfei lived happily and did not know grief. But who would have thought that after a while the head would burst into anger with many years of envy and kill Jean? The most disgusting thing in this situation is that the head was initially jealous of Jean for taking away Lingfei, whom he really liked. Fortunately, Jean managed to take care of the safety of his beloved, and the girl managed to escape from the clutches of the head of the flying immortals. The lady immediately asks him to stop, saying that she doesn't understand how he knows this story, but for telling this secret she can kill him. Alistair says that he understands Lingfei's thirst for revenge on the head of the flying immortals and can help with this, but he does not like talking to someone who is higher. The girl descends the steps from her throne, coming closer to the main character, and asks him to lay down his plan of action. Alistair says that he is well aware that Lingfei cannot compare with him in strength, but he, along with the Wang sect, is ready to help her. He also adds that for his help he only asks for one thing: to know the name of the person who invited them here. The lady replies that she arrived at the invitation of the head of the Fort of Evil Spirits because he said that he was only interested in the jewel located in Dauha. Alistair replies that there is a Brahma fruit that grows on a tree in one of the 8 divine shrines of the universe, and its power is enough to destroy the universe. The girl turns out to be incredibly amazed by this information because she does not believe that the thing from the ancient scriptures and the 8 shrines really exist. Alistair says that the fruit located in Dauha is one of countless numbers and the 7th Emperor will arrive there as soon as it appears. Ling Fei is quite surprised by this fact and cannot believe that he knows about the fruit even before its appearance. The main character also adds that it was he who moved the location of Dauha in order to wait for the fruit to ripen. In those days, when the ruler of the western border, the Black Dragon Emperor, received a Brahma bone, he planted it, and, having learned about this, the 7th Emperor began a great war. The girl is trying to understand how the main character knows so much information, and he says that his name is Alistair, and he is the governor of the Van Sect, which is looking for allies. Having carefully considered everything, Ling Fei gives her consent, promising to help at the right time, after which the protagonist leaves, leaving the girl alone. On his way out of the chamber, he is met by Vanessa and Judy, who immediately ask how the negotiations went, and he asks them not to worry. Alistair tells Judy that he has put in a good word for her, and gives her a note with instructions saying that she needs to run some errands for him. Having received approval from his new subordinate, the main character is glad that everything is going as he planned and prepares to contemplate the Rio performance. I intend to find out who the head of the evil spirits is, and you wait until Ling Fei leaves Dauha and tell her to. After giving instructions to Vanessa, he orders her to get to work, saying that she and his puppet will be very useful in the implementation of his plan. Vanessa is a little embarrassed. In her thoughts she understands that the protagonist instills slight fear in her, and she is amazed how he managed to work out the plan in such detail. The evil fort has enough strength to defeat the Scarlet Sky Palace and the Wang Sect. Why did it need to call the ruler Sect and the mouth of the flying immortals? Meanwhile, the competition between the sects is coming to an end, and the presenter asks to hand over all the crystals received so that they can count the points. Crystals that leave the territory of Dauha will disappear within half an hour, so don't dare to cheat. Austin decides to be the first to hand over the crystals they collected, saying that they should be divided equally among the 10 members of their sect. Having finished counting, the presenter says that when recalculated to the first level at the evil fort, each participant collected 103 crystals. The brothers of the Scarlet Sky Palace are very surprised by this fact, realizing how strong their opponents really are. After which the elder brother also decides to hand over their crystals, also leading to himself, and dividing them into 10 participants. He also decides to tease the head of Alana, telling her to divide the crystals between 2 or 3 people, otherwise their sect will not receive anything at all. The girl silently dumps the crystals they collected on the table, and the presenter announces that at the Scarlet Sky Palace each participant collected 98 pieces, and in the Wang sect 116. All the heads are shocked by this state of affairs, and the head of the sect, Wang, grinning, realizes that they took first place. Now I will announce the results. This time the evil fort can send 10, the Wang sect can send 6, and the Scarlet Sky Palace can send 4. The presenter is interrupted by the elder brother of the Scarlet Sky sect, declaring that they do not agree with these results. Alana states that they couldn't cheat because everyone knows that monster crystals, once extracted, cannot be stored longer than the time during which half of the smoking candle burns out, and they won on their own. All the war participants of other sects begin to be indignant, declaring that the Bath sect are simply rotten traitors and they could not collect enough crystals. One of the warriors flies into a rage, offering to kill all members of the sect and take their crystals for himself. Alana manages to notice that the 3 heads of the Scarlet Sky Palace emanate the same aura, that they are traitors in her sect, and concludes that they are controlled by evil spirits. Elder Casper immediately manages to react to their opponent's aggression and stop the attacker with a powerful attack. The remaining elders also do not stand aside and easily deal with other dissatisfied people who are going to attack them. The members of the Bat sect turn out to be not so weak and proudly declare that their enemies should not expect them to just give up and fight to the very end. The eldest brother of the Scarlet Sky Palace cannot stand this state of affairs and immediately orders all the people of his sects to destroy the Wang sect. Lady Alana also utters a battle cry, ordering all forces under her control to immediately defeat Scarlet Sky Palace. She falls under the attack, and the leader of the battle, in the heat of battle, gets hit, knocking over her podium along with all the collected crystals. The heads of the sects immediately enter into a squabble, starting to exchange blows, trying to destroy their opponent with all their might. The 3 brothers of the Scarlet Sky Palace decide that Lady Alana must be destroyed first and gather together to cast a powerful dual spell. Having combined their powers, They release a rapid beam of energy, after which a powerful explosion occurs, and it seems that no one should survive at its epicenter. The brothers begin to rejoice, and the members of the Wang sect begin to worry, but gradually the smoke clears, and they notice a standing silhouette, hoping that Mrs. Alana is okay. The head of the sect turns out to be in perfect order, and Vanessa stands in front of her, accompanied by the main character's puppet, who managed to absorb all the energy of the explosion. And the girl says that they arrived as soon as they could to help the Wang sect, and the lady manages to notice that the puppet has changed a lot. Without having time to fully think about what happened, the doll immediately rushes to attack one of the brothers of the Scarlet Sky Palace. The middle brother grins, saying that not a single worthless puppet can compete with his greatness, releasing a stream of powerful flame at her. Through the tongues of fire, he manages to notice the tip of the blade, which strikes him right between the eyes, because such a weak attack is not capable of dealing with such a powerful enemy. At the same moment, the elder brother of the Scarlet Sky sect wonders what kind of person could create such a terrifying puppet that is at the level of the free boundary. It is not surprising that the governor asked us to respond to their cunning with cunning. The people of the palace are subordinate to the evil fort, and they themselves started the war. The main character's puppet does not stop and continues to attack its enemies, destroying everything in its path. This whole situation infuriates the elder brother of the palace of the Scarlet Sky sect, and he says that they cannot defeat him with a couple of worthless warriors and a soulless puppet. They enter into battle, and the reaction speed and speed of movement are enough for the older brother to evade the doll's rapid attacks. Successfully timing a counterattack, he accumulates a huge stream of blue magical energy in his hand and strikes the puppet's body with all his might. The entire burst of energy is absorbed by the armor located under the doll's clothes, and the crushing power of the blow turns into a weak slap. At this very second, the puppet, without wasting a moment, sharply counterattacks, cutting off the opponent's right hand, to which he was trying to strike. Vanessa wastes no time using a holding spell to help defeat the sect leader and prevent him from counterattacking. All the elders of the Bath sect also join in using this opportunity to end everything here and now. Together they crush the head of the Scarlet Sky sect, and Lady Alana orders the rest of the henchmen to be dealt with immediately. Unexpectedly for everyone present, looking at the sky, they notice a huge armada of ships arriving at the place of their battle. On the deck of the two main ships, they notice the head of the sect of the Flying Immortal family named Taoist, and also our recent acquaintance Ling Fei, the head of the sect of rulers, who apparently finished dealing with her affairs. Alana is quite surprised by the arrival of two such important people and tries to understand why they came to their continent. When cats gnaw at mice, freedom comes, and in this current situation we are mice. All the present members of the Wang sect begin to get nervous, deciding what to do in this situation because they assume that the number of their opponents has increased right now. The head of the family of Flying Immortals suggests that Lin Fei first sort things out and then talk about the past. The sworn enemies immediately enter into a quarrel, and the girl declares that she does not intend to wait, and also to devote plans for further actions to her enemy. After which the eye of the sect of rulers flies into the air, intending to destroy the head of the sect of Flying Immortals and send him to hell. This is how you decided to talk to me, in which case I will show you the difference between a student and a teacher. Vanessa, holding the sign of the governor in her hand, says that on his behalf she orders to help the head of the ruler's sect kill the head of the Flying Immortals. Mrs. Alana agrees with this decision, immediately giving the order in the depths of her soul, hoping that our main character is a very scary person and this is part of his plan. At this very moment, all the elders of the Bath sect immediately rush to attack. Mrs. Alana decides to clarify where Alistair is now, to which she receives the answer that he went in search of the real head of the Fort of Evil Spirits. Alana understands that the current head of the fort has absorbed 4 demon lords and his strength cannot be underestimated, and the battle must be ended as soon as possible and help the governor. At this time, the elders of the Wang sect, cooperating with each other, pressed and inflicted multiple damage on the head of the Flying Immortal sect. The old man realizes that they were given incorrect information and the enemy is too strong and decides to simply retreat, not wanting to die on the battlefield. Ling Fei, with a menacing look, thirsty for revenge, is not going to just let him go. The girl, drawing her katana with one precise movement, cuts off her teacher's head, ordering him to go beg for forgiveness until the end of time. After such a grandiose action, she immediately orders all 36 ships of her sect to destroy the race of flying immortals. At this time, Judy is considering a proposal to leave the sect of rulers, playing out her role. Her false lover falls into her arms while the girl treacherously takes out a blade from her bosom, intending to commit betrayal. Finally, the girl says that she cannot believe that he bought her lie, in her head thanks to our main character, because he calculated everything very well. After Alistair's order is carried out, the girl takes the vault ring from the body of the lifeless man. Having opened its contents to make sure of the necessary artifact, she finds the shoes of flying immortals that he really had. While all this was happening behind the scenes, the girl managed to return to the very heat of the battle, asking the head of Alana where Alistair was now. Turning to Linfei, Alana asks the ruler to sort out everything else while they go to the governor. Before parting, Linfei asks to convey words of gratitude to the protagonist, because alone she could not have taken revenge. At this very time, somewhere at the other end of Dauha, a powerful concentration of energy occurs. At the epicenter of the raging whirlwind is the head of the Fort of Evil, who uses the Breath of Death technique. The main character watching him understands for what purpose he called 2 sects to start a battle, because he simply wanted to increase the number of deaths in order to strengthen the Breath of Death. Finally, the technique is almost complete. Very soon the Brahma fruit will be in my hands, and I will become a true evil spirit. At this very moment, his subordinates return to the head of the evil fort, declaring that they have completed their assignment. He turns out to be very glad that everything is going according to his plan and orders him to stay here on defense until he returns. Nowadays, only the most venerable can enter Dauha when the gates are open. Having gathered his strength, the head of the Fort of Evil Spirits dives under the water and rushes to the very bottom of the lake, bumping into a mysterious boatman. Bowing his head, he greets a mysterious gray-haired man in a straw hat who asks him who he is and why he has come. The head of the Fort of Evil Spirits states that it is not at all necessary to know this, and he arrived to take him away from here, trying to touch the boatman, but the flow of primitive energy does not allow him to do this. The boatman declares that he has chosen the wrong path, and he will not follow him until he dispels his doubts, and besides, others are about to appear. At this time, Alistair realizes that the leader infiltrated Dauha simply used his double as a diversion. His thoughts are interrupted by the head of the Fort of Evil, who emerges from the lake, realizing that, according to the boatman, someone else should arrive and stumbles upon our main character. I'm not going to have long conversations. Alistair asks his familiar to borrow the Staff of Nirvana. At this time, his opponents are happy that such a tiny monkey will not be able to stop them, and will fly away with one blow. Getting closer to his familiar, he takes on his true, much larger, terrifying form and with a powerful blow sends the head of Fort of the Evil Spirits flying. At this time, the protagonist, using the magical properties of the staff, increases it to colossal sizes and with a powerful blow cuts through the entire surface of the water. From such truly unimaginable power, the water in the lake moves apart, freeing up a narrow passage between the water walls directly to the place where the boatman is located. After which, using the storage located in the staff, he releases the hot desert into the wild. The head of the Fort of Evil Spirits immediately gets closer to the boatman, surprised that it was the old man who was talking about him. Without much prelude or conversation, the head of the fort immediately rushes to attack our protagonist using the death ray. Alistair simply dodges this attack without any problems, declaring that he has a small conversation. Looking at the boatman, the old man declares that the Great Tao is holding him and all his attempts to get out are in vain, after which he asks the question what the Great Tao is. The head of the evil fort understands that he is in a losing position because he also must pass the boatman's test in order to get what he wants, and is not going to lose. The Great Tao is the highest manifestation. No one can resist someone who has reached the limit of cultivation, and in fact it is the final point in the development of strength. Countless time ago, 9 emperors, the strongest in history, appeared in the world. They represented the great Tao of the era of their reign. With a slight grin on his face and complete confidence in his victory, Alistair asks his opponent why he suddenly decided so. Assuming that he is almost close to solving the boatman's test, he says that there was no one stronger than the emperors, trying to use the mind control technique on the main character. The main character easily resists the mind control ability, saying that his opponent is clearly overestimating his strength if he thinks that such a low-level technique will work on him. Looking into the sky, Alistair says that the 9 emperors are powerful, but they do not know both the lost battle knowledge and those that will appear in the future, and how they can represent the great Tao with such problems and knowledge. The head of the evil fort is amazed and says that since the protagonist has such a loose tongue, let him answer that there really is a great Tao. Before answering the question, Alistair tells him that his bloodline is deep-rooted, and in fact he is a descendant of the emperor of the wicked race. Interfering in their conversation, the old boatman once again asks our main character the answer to the question of what the great Tao actually is. I divide it into 3 phases: past, present and future Tao, whose unity is the great Tao. By analyzing the past and understanding the present, you can find out the future. You open my eyes, sir. Even though you are so young, you were able to comprehend true knowledge. Alistair thanks the boatman for his gratitude and watches as the old man's body begins to emit a large amount of energy. Gradually, his body begins to dissolve, fluttering in the wind, and a mysterious object appears in the place where the heart should be located. This object turns out to be the fruit of Brahma, which in its entirety exudes a colossal and unimaginable amount of pure energy. Indignant at the current situation, the head of the evil fort attacks the main character in the back using the bloodthirstiness technique. Alistair easily blocks this useless attack, realizing that entering Dauha has greatly weakened his opponent. Realizing that he cannot win the battle, he tries to steal and appropriate the fruit for himself, and then get out of here as quickly as possible. Alistair prevents him from doing this, and, using a powerful energy blade, cuts off the right hand that his opponent was trying to grab the fruit. I noticed the similarity of techniques and the inability to regenerate. The head of the Fort of Evil Ones understands who actually killed his subordinate in the Wang sect. The spy was sent to the dimension of thoughts, and the appropriate punishment had already been prepared for him. But he did not expect that all this was the work of the Viceroy. Yes, it was I who killed your insignificant servant, and his hand, like yours, was cut off by my technique. The main character, to celebrate, rushes to take the fruit for himself, but the head of the evil fort does not give up with his last strength, and also tries to grab onto it. As a result of their confrontation, the fetus is torn into 2 parts, releasing some of the energy outward. At the same second, all the elders of the Van sect, led by Alana, arrive at the place of their battle, who orders them to help the governor. I understand the hopelessness of his situation. The head of the fort decides to attack first, and not wait for his opponents to move. At this time, Alistair, deciding not to waste time, absorbs half of the fruit, which he managed to tear off. His entire body begins to exude a huge amount of vital energy, and he rejoices that he has finally managed to level up again. Now he is at the turn of the cycle, although the Brahma fruit has not yet fully transferred all its powers. At this time, the elders of the Wang sect use a combined sealing technique by placing the head of the evil fort into the energy cubes. Mistress Alana, with eyes full of determination and the rightness of her actions, utters farewell words before destroying her opponent. The head of the fort understands that he cannot do anything against so many people because their forces are at completely different levels. At this time, Elder Howard realizes that all this time Alistair has actually been deceiving him and is not the envoy of the evil spirit's fort, and right now wants to destroy his master. You understand that he has very little time to think about his further actions. He decides to help his master and save him. Elder Casper does not understand what is happening and why his longtime friend is trying to save their common enemy. The head of the fort begins to laugh joyfully, realizing that at least someone else remains on his side, and begins to shower Howard with promises of limitless power. Alistair, realizing that their agreement has been violated, says that they need to be more respectful of human kindness and not violate the terms of the deal. At that very second, he activates the pact that he made with Howard, and his heart is clamped with magical chains, stopping his life cycle. The head of the forte is surprised that the protagonist used a bloody sacrifice of the heart, and there is also a little of evil spirits in him. No, I have all the good I have and have the right to dispose of the techniques I want, and I also ask everyone present to let him go. Such an incredible request causes a mysterious shock among all the elders present and the head of the Wang sect, not understanding what to do next. The head of the fort also turns out to be quite surprised and decides to find out whether Alistair really wants to let him go. The main character, threatening with technology that does not allow the evil spirits to regenerate for the last time, offers to leave in peace or die here now. His opponent grins and leaves the battlefield, calling Alistair a very strange person and that next time he will be better prepared. You can join anywhere, but you will have to answer for your bad deeds. The main character uses the same technique that he once used on Elder Howard and also binds the hearts of the heads of the Fort of Evil Spirits with a pact, after which the head of Fort hurries to leave the battlefield as soon as possible, using all his might to protect our protagonist's armor, and how he dared to treat him. At this very second, a huge ominous eye appears in the sky above our heroes, watching everything that happens. Having examined everything that is happening, it disappears, and the main character says that it was the look of the 7th Emperor, and if they had released the head of the fort, he would have found them. After the words were spoken, Alistair, exhausted and not yet fully recovered from absorbing the fruit, falls to the ground. He hastens to reassure all his friends and acquaintances by saying that his body needs some time to recover. Casper tries to cheer him up by saying that he is a wonderful person and will definitely cope with everything. Alistair praises him for such a fiery speech, wondering from whom exactly he learned such oratory skills, and then offers to return back. After some time, our heroes find themselves on the ship of the Bath Sect and are heading back home. One of the students reports to Mrs. Alana that the ruler has dealt with the family of flying immortals and the Scarlet Sky Palace, and is now waiting in the indicated place. Go and tell her that we have sorted everything out here and there is no need for her to come and thank us for our help. At this time, Alistair is slowly meditating and regaining his strength, and Vanessa is watching him, trying not to disturb him. The girl says that she was very worried that the main character might die, and he grins and says that this is simply impossible. Vanessa asks not to make fun of her because after everything he did for her, she can't just treat him heartlessly. This is to ensure that you don't worry and don't worry once again. I have everything under control and thoughtfully several steps forward. The 7th Demon Emperor left because the head of the demons had the fruit. But why didn't he discover that you had absorbed part of it? It's all thanks to your help and the time you gained. Did you really know from the very beginning that this would be exactly the ending of this whole event, when you were still in the capital? No, you are mistaken. My plan is just beginning to come into effect and very soon I will return half of the fruit, and then I will rise to the 2nd stage of my milestone. And when the time comes the whole world will fall at my feet. After some time, our heroes still meet with the head of the sect of rulers and decide to discuss further plans. Thank you, ruler, for your help with the Scarlet Sky Palace and the Flying Immortals. We will never forget this. There is no need for courtesy. Scarlet Sky has not yet been completely exterminated, so I ask you to resolve this issue yourself. At this time, Alistair approaches Judy and asks if she fulfilled his instructions and got the necessary artifact, after which he thanks the head of the sect of rulers, saying that if it were not for her subordinate, their union would never have been destined to happen. The girl expresses great gratitude for organizing this plan, and if they have completely figured it out, then it's time to say goodbye and return home. Alistair agrees with this proposal and hopes that their paths will cross again sooner or later. After some time, returning to the capital, the main character gives instructions to the elders to go to the Scarlet Sky Palace and destroy the remaining followers. And he orders the other half of the elders to return home and start preparing because he wants to take them to the Palace of Heaven. The 7th Demon Emperor and his offspring are already waiting for the appointed hour and imminent changes are about to come to this world. Finally, he asks Mrs. Alana to find him this evening at a reservoir of the highest purity, after which the girl becomes embarrassed and gives her consent. Vanessa, watching from the sidelines, says that, apparently, the main character's relationship with the local girls is very good. Alistair asks her not to be jealous, to which she blushes and is slightly embarrassed, and says that she is not at all jealous of his other girls. Finally, he asks her to have a good rest, because soon they will leave the continent, and much more serious battles await them. Looking at his familiar, who has practically no strength left, he decides that he also needs energy charging. The main character takes out a certain amount of energy cores from his storage and invites the monkey to feast on them. Eating 100 million at a time will not feed you, but you will become much stronger, so it's worth it. At that same second, the sky across the entire continent is covered with a black haze and a voice from above says that everyone must obey the order of the Emperor and 108 girls must appear at the Palace of Heaven in 3 days. At this time, Lady Alana and the princess discuss her trip to the Palace of Heaven on the orders of the Emperor. Their conversation is instilled by Alistair, who asks the head of the house for permission to communicate with her sister. Alana says that she is very scared and asks the main character to console her so that she does not worry. At the exit from the temple, the head of the sect is met by 3 elders who ask what condition the princess is in. Mistletoe says that Kini is too young and should not have been drafted as one of the emperor's wives. It's true that my sister and many other celestials are too young. They shouldn't have been called at such a time. Apparently the emperor was up to something. At this time, the princess falls into the arms of the main character, sobbing, and they say that she missed him very much and was worried that this would happen to him. All this time I have been praying for you to return the rest of the sects alive, and even if I am destined to live only 3 days, I want to spend these 3 days with you. Kini also does not lose hope that, upon arriving at the Palace of Heaven, she will be able to talk with the 7th Emperor and resolve this misunderstanding so that he will eventually release her. Alistair presses the girl's head to his chest, saying that they will all go together as her support. He also adds that in no case will he allow the princess to be killed because the Emperor is not his ultimate goal on the path to world domination. The girl is very surprised and decides to ask if this is all just part of the plan that our main character is following, to which he received an approving answer. The princess is very glad that Alistair planned everything a long time ago, but still does not understand why he should gather celestials at such a time. He begins to explain why everything is happening this way, but the princess interrupts him by pressing her breasts against him and says that first she would like. When asked by Alistair what exactly she wanted, the girl says that the main character is terrible because he himself knows the answer perfectly well, but first she needs to go for a swim. After some time, the girl waits for the main character, sitting on the bed in one translucent robe covering her beautiful body. The two of them share a passionate kiss, and the protagonist says that they need to hurry because they have very little time left. After some time, our heroes and the princesses leave the rest, and it is clear from their faces that they did not waste any time. At the exit from the temple, they are met by the elders, led by Alana, who notice that the princess has clearly cheered up and looks calmer. The head of the sect decides to clarify whether the main character knows that the 7th Demon Emperor summoned Siny ahead of time. Alistair agrees with this, saying that all this happened through his fault, and now he will explain everything. Everyone present is shocked to hear from the main character that the 7th Demon Emperor is wounded, and it was all their fault. Remember, I released the head of the evil spirits, who is the offspring of the Emperor. Their blood relationship is very strong, but he is much weaker, so I allowed him to take half of the Brahma fruit with him. After absorbing it, he will probably want to try to attack the Emperor, but he is unlikely to succeed, so he will be captured and the stronghold will be removed so that the Emperor can reuse it. However, they will not notice the trap controlling the blood sacrifice in the heart that I left on the body of the head of the evil fort when he ran away. Since he absorbed the fruit that is in the heart, he is still under my control. When he was in danger, I found out about this and activated the fruit that strengthened him and injured the Emperor. If the Emperor tries to extract the fruit, I will destroy it with my technique, which is why he called upon the Celestials to heal his wounds and try again. After outlining his entire plan, the main character offers to go with him to the Palace of Heavenly Purity and kill the 7th Emperor, after which he can take the second half of the fruit and become the new ruler of the mainland. You understand that all the elders and the head of the sect are on his side. He asks everyone to carefully prepare and set out at dawn. In the evening of the same day, Alistair comes to the pond of higher frequency where Alana is already waiting for him. Having exposed his bodies, Alistair warns the girl that he will use the technique of returning oblivion, and increasing her power level will take almost the whole night. By activating this technique, the protagonist hopes that the chi energy flowing in Alana's body will also help him move to a new stage of the cycle boundary. The girl's body begins to absorb the energy entering her, and her face turns red as she tries with all her might to restrain her moans. This process takes almost the whole night, and the next morning our heroes, having prepared for the road, go to the palace. Elder Lewis decides to ask Alistair if their sect has enough people to fight the 7th Demon Emperor. Now our sects are the strongest on the mainland. Even if they are not enough, what do we need those who do not meet the required level of strength? And I am sure our forces are more than enough. Flying across the sky, Alana asks the governor where exactly they are moving because the Palace of Heavenly Purity is located on the other side. Alistair asks her not to worry, then folds 2 fingers and uses another trump card hidden in his sleeve. A huge shining teleportation circle opens in front of their ship, causing incredible surprise to everyone present. The main character says that there are plenty of them in the universe, and if you know where to look, you can travel to all worlds. Gathering all their will into a fist, our heroes pass through a mysterious teleportation circle in the hope of ending up in the right place. Ahead is the Palace of Heavenly Purity, and the place where the 7th Emperor lives. In just an instant we reached another continent. Alistair asks Alan how many more teleportation circles do you know, to which the main character says a little more than 100. At this time Darcia, standing on the mast of the ship, notices another airship ahead, which is approaching them from the bow of the ship. This ship turns out to be the fleet of the Sea Dragon Palace, which, apparently, also came to the Emperor's call. Once at the main gates of our Palace of Heavenly Purity, the heroes see a sacred cauldron called the Deicide's Tripod. Alistair turns all the attention of his friends to this tripod and says that it was left by the late Black Dragon Emperor. He also adds that the star in which they are located was once divided into 4 parts: eastern, western, southern and northern. The Black Dragon ruled in the western part, and after his death the western part was divided into 2, joining the northern and southern. The head of the mainland, the 7th Emperor, received all the savings of the Black Dragon, but his most important legacy could not be found, which is why he captured this palace. Alana notices that the tripod emanates the smell of blood and a certain ominous aura that fills her with awe. All because the 7th Emperor killed more than 100,000 people for the right to inherit the place of the Black Dragon, and the tripod swallowed them up as it should have swallowed Kini and the rest of the Celestials. Their conversation is interrupted by someone's voice, which mocks them, saying that just look at these scum who are enraged by the essence of the tripod. Looking up, they see disciples of another sect talking sarcastically, mocking all the followers of the Wang sect. Lewis immediately tries to stand up for the honor of his sect, asking for permission from his Viceroy to kill the impudent brats. Not today, we don't have time to deal with a third-rate sect. Let them yap after them whatever they want. Having completely settled in the palace, and having reached the main hotel, the hero rents rooms for all members of his sect. At the same moment, those same insolent people from another sect who were mocking them stop them and say that they will take the last rooms in the hotel. One of the students says that this mid-range hotel is too good for them and they need to look for shelter in some simpler corner. At this very second, Burton intervenes in the conversation and is glad to see his good friends, and is glad that they have also arrived. Vanessa, immediately seeing her father, hurries to greet him and ask if everything is okay with him. At this time, little Shani creeps up to our main character and immediately rushes into his arms, saying that she misses him very much. The girl says that Brittany has urgent business, so she couldn't come and she had to go here with this red-haired uncle. Seeing the head of the capital, the insolent people from the third-rate sect immediately bow their heads respectfully, greeting Burton and expressing their respect to him. This hotel is a wretched kennel for dogs. Why don't you, Alistair, and all the members of your sect live in my chambers in the Palace of Heavenly Purity near the Hall of the 7th Emperor? The most impudent person from the sect who insulted Alistair and his friends immediately tries to apologize, realizing what a mistake he made in relation to such highly respected people. He also asks Mr. Burton for permission to go with them, to which he replies that such trash has no place next to him and Alistair. Finally, when leaving, the head of the capital orders the guard to ensure that the sect remains penniless. After some time, having reached the Palace of Heavenly Purity, the main character meets Russell. He says that all these days he thought for a long time about the innocent people killed, but unfortunately, on the entire continent there is no person who could compete with the 7th Emperor, and this is simply impossible. Alistair hastens to disappoint him by saying that such a person still exists, to which Russell, with incredible surprise, hastens to find out who this person is, because he is ready to pay any price for information. Smiling and looking at his good friend, the main character says with complete confidence and steadfastness that this person is Russell himself. You think too highly of me, dear friend. My current level is the 3rd stage of the free frontier, and even after 100 years I will not become an equal to the Emperor. Only if the legacy of the Black Dragon and the power of the Brahma fruit are not passed on to you. How do you think you will cope with this? Russell cannot believe that the main character knows about the location of the Black Dragon's heritage. When he was on the verge of death, he realized that there was no guarantee that others would preserve the heritage, so he hid it in a tripod. My long stay here has given me time to find out how to extract the heritage from the tripod, but for now it will remain a secret. The main character puts a green sign on the table saying that he wants to return this honorable order to its rightful owner since it is the key to the Black Dragon's heritage. Alistair also asks not to worry and leave all the dirty work to him, and also asks at what appointed time the Emperor invited the Celestials. Having received the answer that they will arrive tomorrow, he leaves Russell's room saying that it is when the girls arrive that they will carry out their plan. Listening to Russell's concern that nothing will work out for them, he says not to worry because he has a plan, and when the time comes, the lives of all people will be in his hands, and he will need to cope with the legacy. I will do everything possible so that tomorrow does not happen. You will forever remain my brother and good friend. The next morning, Celestials from all over the mainland begin to arrive at the Emperor's Hall, including Princess Kingi, the sister of the head of the Wang Sect. The girl's head flashes with memories that she promises Alistair to do everything he asked her to do before leaving. Alistair, accompanied by the elders, prepares for the start of the performance, realizing that as soon as the princess activates the blood sacrifice, the Emperor will go crazy and they will immediately break in. After some time, a silhouette of a creature appears in the sky above the palace, resembling a person from whom a truly unthinkable and ominous aura emanates. It turns out that this is the 7th Emperor, who at this time is fighting with the head of the evil spirit's fort, wondering how he was able to get out of prison and attack him. All members of the Scarlet Sky Palace present understand that the situation is clearly not going according to plan, and they need to notify everyone about what happened as soon as possible. At this time, our heroes, standing at the gates of the palace, mistakenly think that it was the princess who gave the signal using the blood sacrifice technique, and it is time to go inside. Our heroes, led by Alistair, immediately burst into the palace, bypassing the guards who are trying to stop them. Once inside, the main character releases his puppet, which he sends to deal with small and very weak opponents. Members of the Scarlet Palace do not understand what is happening because riots have broken out in the Emperor's Hall, and they think that the days of the insolent people are already numbered. Entering our heroes, they encounter crowds of various sects who have arrived at the palace, who decide to curry favor with the Emperor and try to stop the intruders. At the same second, the head of the capital Burton appears and brought a huge number of his warriors to help Alistair. Also nearby are warriors accompanied by Russell from a pure palace under heaven, which greatly equalizes the position of forces on the battlefield. At this time, the 7th Emperor is dealing with the head of the evil spirits, trying to understand who the man is who was able to absorb the Brahma fruit and strengthen his minion. Noticing how their battle is progressing, Alistair understands that the head of the evil spirits clearly does not have enough strength to cope with the Emperor. He is noticed by the princess, who immediately rushes into his arms and asks him to give him the blood sacrifice so that he can use it himself. Having received the main control technique from Kini, the hero understands that plans have changed slightly, and he will need to act according to circumstances. All this time, on the 7th day, the Emperor is trying to understand how a person managed to activate the Brahma fruit while being at the turn of the cycle. Meanwhile, at the top of the tripod is Russell, who acts according to the instructions of our protagonist. He hopes that they have enough strength to cope and put the plan into action, because otherwise they have all just signed their own death warrant. The main character begins to act and orders his familiar, armed with a staff, to attack the 7th Emperor in order to test the level of his capabilities. The monkey, using his staff, delivers a powerful blow to the body of the ruler, who easily blocks it with his left hand. At this time, Alistair, using his speed, approaches the 7th Emperor in the hope of attacking him from behind from his blind spot. The Lord says that they allow themselves a lot, being annoying midges. They produce an angry roar and throw them to the sides with a powerful burst of energy. After which, using his incredible strength, he tries to cut the body of our main character into pieces using his claws. His attempt fails as Alistair manages to use a secret technique, and in fact his body was only an illusion to distract attention. The Emperor is surprised how he knows the summer technique, and how he was able to study it, to which Alistair says that it is none of his business. In a fit of anger, he immediately attacks the protagonist with a powerful beam of energy, not understanding how he dares to provoke such a powerful creature while being on the edge of the cycle. The main character, having quite good reflexes, manages to throw a spear of a shining stream at the 7th Emperor, which produces a powerful explosion and gives him a few seconds of time. Raising his hand in the air, the hero activates the blood sacrifice technique, ordering the head of the fort to obey him. At this same second, the seemingly lifeless body of the head of the evil fort grabs the seventh demon emperor into his palm. The Lord turns out to be quite surprised that all this was planned, but does not understand what the main character plans to do next. After these words, Alistair approaches the body of the seventh emperor and hits him in the face with all his might using the technique of fighting evil spirits. This blow only scratches the seventh emperor, and he grins that with this level of power he cannot be defeated. Alistair manages to grab a few drops of blood, saying that he did not try to destroy him, and this amount should be enough. Then, using the power of control, he sends this drop of blood towards the tripod on which Russell is located. Not wanting to be captured by the seventh demon any longer, the Emperor emits sharp thorns from his body and breaks free from the grip, after which he knocks out his subordinate, saying that if he didn't have half of the Brahma fruit, he would have finished him off a long time ago. It's interesting that the remaining descendants of the Demon Lord have both the Staff of Nirvana and the Samara technique, which I really need. Alistair says that under no circumstances is he going to give them away, and then gets into a fighting stance, charging his body with the above-mentioned technique. The seventh Demon Emperor, wanting to get all this by force, immediately rushes to attack our main character. They begin to exchange blows, and for a second it even seems that our protagonist is able to withstand such a powerful state alone. Alistair understands that the supreme line of power is indeed very frightening, and if the battle had been fought on equal terms, he would definitely have lost. The Emperor says that he sees the protagonist's body as a shining hole, and apparently he has a lot of secrets with him, and since he came to seek his death, having overestimated his own strength, he will help him with this. Alistair says that he is not going to convince him otherwise, and very soon someone will come to his aid. At this time, at the top of the tripod, Russell is almost finishing the ritual while in the lotus position. Having finished absorbing the Black Dragon's legacy, he introduces himself as the heir of the Heavenly Palace and says that the seventh Demon Emperor has come to an end. This old Black Dragon left his legacy in the tripod. Perhaps you managed to absorb it, but now it is very unstable and I will be able to destroy you. The seventh Demon Emperor is trying to get closer to Russell as soon as possible in order to put an end to many years of enmity. At this time, Alistair stands over the lifeless body of the head of the evil fort, which still contains a fragment of the Brahma fruit. Using a blood sacrifice technique, he extracts the remainder of the fetus from the body of the head of the fort. The evil spirits turn out to be still alive and begin to shout at the main character, not understanding where on the mainland such a person came from, because an ordinary mortal cannot have so much knowledge and strength. The main character says that he talks too much, and then snaps his fingers and places his body inside his vault ring. Having finished removing the remaining Brahma fruit from the body of the head of the evil fort, he offers it as a gift to the seventh emperor. He, in turn, grinning at the main character with incredible zeal, reaches out with his hand to absorb him. The protagonist, grinning and not wanting to believe in such an incorruptible greed of the emperor, uses the Dainichi technique on his hand, which sets him on fire with a violet flame. In a fit of rage, the seventh emperor concentrates a large amount of energy in his undamaged hand, intending to destroy Alistair with one blow. At this moment, Russell stops him, slamming him into the ground with a kick and then tearing off two huge horns protruding from his skull. Trying to get up and concentrate energy in his damaged, burning hand in order to recover, he is immediately stopped by Alistair's familiar with a blow from the sacred staff. Without wasting any time, the main character immediately attracts the second piece of the Brahma fruit to himself in order to finally unite it. Releasing the part of the fruit that he absorbed on his own, concentrating the energy in his palms, he begins to cross the two halves together. The parts of the Brahma fruit begin to slowly but surely merge into a single whole, increasing the amount of energy contained in them. Using the strength and power of the main fruit, the hero fires a huge beam charged with pure energy at the seventh Demon Emperor, which pierces right through him. In addition to this, Russell decides to use ancient tactics to avenge the 100,000 dead people of his palace. Observing everything that is happening, students of various sects notice a disk of cessation of life in the air and say that this is the most powerful formation of technology in the pure palace of heaven. They understand that things are going badly. They need to escape from here as soon as possible, because soon everything in the area could be destroyed. After a short pause, a powerful explosion occurs that destroys everything in its path, including the body of the 7th Demon Emperor. Exhausted, Russell cries, raising his head to the sky, and says that he was finally able to avenge them. Alistair asks him to moderate his sadness because their battle is not over yet, and it seems to him that Russell should also feel some hesitation. You should understand that the planet on which we are located is one of countless numbers in the system, and after his death the Black Dragon left only the east, south and west. And now that the Emperor is dead, the balance of power will be upset. That is, you want to say that they will want to divide the lands of our mainland among themselves, and what should we do in this case? The main character asks everyone present from the Wang sect to stay here and restore order to Razila to follow him. Finally, before leaving, he asks his familiar to take the remains of the Demon Emperor for himself as a source of energy. The monkey begins to absorb a colossal amount of power, literally eating the body of the lifeless 7th Demon Emperor. Russell assumes that the other emperors will arrive at the border between the planets in an hour, and they need to hurry. The main character points his friend to a portal that has opened nearby and asks him to follow him. When Russell asks how he knows about the presence of a teleportation portal here, the protagonist replies that he accidentally stumbled upon it. Having passed through the portal, our heroes find themselves in the star system of their planet, somewhere in the sealed lands of magic. The place we are in is a sealed land where 3 emperors once imprisoned the hero of that time, Emperor Summer. And also the Demon Emperor at one time strengthened the seal, and now I want to break it to free him. The main character, holding the Brahma fruit in his hand, says that so many years have passed since he was in the time loop and finally he has returned here again. After 15 minutes, the main character is given the seal to be removed, and he asks Sumer to take care of all parts of the star system, to which the Emperor gives his consent and asks to follow him. Russell at this time cannot believe his eyes, not believing that the person standing next to Alistair is an honorary Sumer, from whom incredible power emanates. He hurries to greet the Emperor as soon as possible. They say that the last will of his ancestor was to bow to you when he met as a sign of gratitude. Be calm, although I was locked up for many years, which weakened me, but the current level is enough to make enemies tremble. Sumer releases a huge number of purple magical arrows from her hands that fly into the distance. At this very second, Russell feels that the energy of the emperors of the east and south has weakened greatly, and apparently they have felt the power of Summer. Alistair expresses incredible respect for such a legendary figure, and Sumer thanks them for his release and asks how he can help them. The main character says that he has already voiced his wish and hopes that the Emperor will be able to bring peaceful times to the mainland since he intends to leave it soon. He also promises this. Russell is told that there are still descendants of the Demon Lord who need to be dealt with. How is it possible that during the years of his reign he provoked a war between the rulers, who were ultimately beheaded? How could they have descendants? Alistair asks to see this for himself, and takes out the body of the head of the evil fort from his storage. There can be no mistake, the energy of the ruler emanates from him. Even after so many years of imprisonment, I still feel it. Sumer tries to find out from the pathetic henchman where the Demon Lord is, to which he begins to blame the main character for everything. The 7th Demon Emperor is dead, and thanks to me you are still alive. Don't you want to thank me in some way? The Demon Emperor can come to Earth twice, the 8th is already dead, so no one can stop him. We are one demon. The protagonist, using mind control skills, says that since he does not want to lay out everything on his own, he will find out about it himself. Before penetrating the mind of the head of the Fort of Evil, he asks Russell to bring him back to consciousness as soon as possible if he begins to bleed. Sumer is quite surprised that the young man can travel in time and space through the minds of other living beings. After some time, he dives into the depths of the universe and goes in search of the information he needs. Having found the period of time he needs, he finds an ominous altar surrounded by a large number of shining red skulls. 10,000 demons protect the soul, and the coffin is made of ebony, which is what sits on top of this altar. On one side of a black coffin covered with runes, he finds a bronze mirror and decides to look into its essence. Through the light of the mirror, he sees the mysterious silhouette of a man who is trying to grab our main character and get out. Once outside the mirror, the man begins to laugh, saying that he has finally had an opportunity. When asked by Alistair who this man is, he introduces himself as Lin and then adds that our protagonist will never leave here again. At that very second, he uses an ominous technique, and the souls of the dead around the altar begin to hold our main character. Alistair immediately tries to run away, to which Lin grins and says that he can't just leave here. At this moment, Alistair regains consciousness with a bloody face and apparently, Russell managed to carry out his instructions and wake him up. The head of the evil fort, who is nearby, begins to laugh, saying that the Emperor has awakened as a demon and they will all soon be sent to the next world. Sumer wonders if the main character really met the Demon Emperor because he should have been dead a long time ago. He is not the real Demon Emperor, but a derivative of the Heavenly Mirror, one of the deities who wants to recreate a new emperor. The divine celestial mirror is capable of reflecting all living things and recreating a copy. Once it was possible to discover it, and the fruit of Brahma, then other shrines will be found, because total chaos is coming in the world. When you Demon Emperor found a mirror and used it, which the other emperors didn't like, and they killed him, I think the Demon Emperor undoubtedly knew the secrets of the mirror, so he wanted to recreate it to keep his secrets. Any shrine has a soul, and the energy of the Demon Emperor still remains in my body. I believe the fruit of Brahma can help me find the mirror. After which the protagonist concentrates the remnants of the demon's energy inside the fruit and launches it into the skies in the hope of receiving a wayfinding sign. It seems that it is on the southern border in the domain of the 9th Buddhist Emperor, and Sumeru clearly does not like this information. Alistair suggests going there because the Hall of 10,000 Buddhas there is the best place for cultivation. Sumer is very surprised that the main character knows about this hall, but he does not understand how, with the boundary of the cycle, he will be able to improve there. It will be enough, and I have a couple more things to do before heading to the southern border. After these words, the protagonist launches a small fireball into the sky and a powerful explosion occurs in the sky above them. They see huge red eyes opening in front of them, after which a huge flying whale appears right above their heads. Invisible until it opens its eyes with 2 wings blocking the sky, it is the fish of heaven. On the head of this whale sits a green-haired girl with a golden brush, who talks on very strange and renounced topics. The only thing that worries this young lady is how the protagonists manage to discover her. Rasul also finds himself at a loss and decides to ask what the blacklist the girl is talking about is and who she even is. Sumer replies that the girl collects data on the military merits of the younger generation, and no one knows her origin, but the rating of the list she keeps is absolutely truthful. Hearing from the girl that he is in 10th place on the list, Russell rushes to thank Alistair, saying that all this is thanks to him, and he, in turn, asks his friend to continue to develop and become stronger. As I'm about to head back home, our heroes are stopped by the Emperor, asking them to accept a gift for their help and their liberation. He puts his hand to his heart, and then begins to extract a piece of powerful yellow energy from his body. After the process is completed, he gives this particle to Alistair, saying that he will definitely need it at the right time. The protagonist accepts the gift with pleasure, after which he thanks the Emperor and goes about his business. Inspecting the gift the main character received, the hero understands that this is a heart of golden blood, and in his entire life Sumer was able to extract only 10 drops. Meanwhile, in the Palace of Heavenly Purity, Elder Casper is basking in the rays of female attention, and Lewis is worried that no one is paying attention to him. And on the roof of the palace at this time, the protagonist's familiar begins to grow demonic horns as a result of absorbing the body of the Emperor. He is lucky that just at this time Alistair returns and notices that after absorbing the consequences they did not have to wait long. He decides to help his subordinate, and, using a technique that prevents the demon from recovering, cuts off these horns. Immediately after this, the monkey begins to cough and a vault ring flies out of its mouth. The protagonist manages to catch him, asking the familiar not to eat anything and at the same time look at what is in the Demon Emperor's ring. Inside there is 10 billion baht of medicine and equipment, 8 parts of the primordial void. This is one of the 5 great techniques of the universe. Taoist principles and training methods of the Celestials are prescribed here, but to master them you need to reach the 3rd stage of the free boundary. Alistair asks his familiar to stand guard while he decides to train and meditate, studying the first part of the primordial void shape-shifting. The first part of casting such a powerful spell is to transform into a deity through the power of thought alone. After 2 hours of training, our hero manages to complete the first stage and his body is noticeably transformed. After such exhausting practice, he takes on human form again and realizes that during this time he has become incredibly sweaty and needs to go wash himself in the nearest hot spring. Not far from the training site, he finds a small pond in which he decides to take hygiene procedures. At this time, he is accidentally found by Darcia, who immediately begins to feel embarrassed and ask for forgiveness because she did not know that the Viceroy was here. The main character asks her not to worry, and since she is here, let her wash his back. While the girl is busy with the process, he invites her to go with him to the southern border, since her old sworn enemy is there. The girl turns out to be quite surprised that Alistair has such information, because this was when she was still just a baby. In those years, one of the 8 major clans was faced with significant changes. The candidate for the position of new elder was accused of conspiring with another clan of being brutally murdered, and this person was your father. The girl immediately begins to cry after hearing the truth, saying that he was not in collusion with strangers, but at that moment no one believed him. She cannot believe that the governor is going to the southern border for her sake, after which he rushes to console her by saying that his goals are much larger, and the family of the current rulers is simply one of the obstacles. Before leaving, he asks to give a note to the princess and give her 300,000 baht from the potion, which should be enough for the Ba'ath sect to continue to develop. Darcia interrupts their conversation, realizing that someone is approaching nearby, and the main character orders her to leave here so that they are not caught and think that they were here together. A few minutes later, Mrs. Alana appears from behind the trees, who is very surprised that the governor is taking hot springs here. Alistair says that he had a very good workout, and after that he decided to freshen up and wash off all the accumulated dirt. The head says that she did not expect that they would be able to kill the 7th demon emperor and catch the moment when Russell would become the new ruler of the mainland. After which the girl takes off all her clothes and comes closer to the main character, and he, in turn, does not understand what is happening. Alana says that she came here to reward our protagonist in her thoughts, very excited by the fact that in front of her is a man who was able to accomplish so many great things in such a short time. Alistair is a little embarrassed and offers to accept gratitude another time, to which the mistress offers to help him relax. After these words, the mistress dives under the water and begins to gently and affectionately please the main character with her mouth. After some time, she emerges and asks him if he is now ready to accept the main gift. The protagonist cannot refuse such a tempting offer, and all this time the Darshas are simply watching what is happening. A few hours later, our heroes lie in a tender embrace and discuss further plans of action. After which they return to the palace, where Lewis reports to the butcher that the Celestials do not take a single step away from Casper, and they need to move on. You understand that you cannot deprive the elder of female attention. The main character offers to let all the girls who want to board their ship. Lewis is shocked by this answer. At the same time, I notice how the head of the sect, Alana, looks at the main character and behaves like a melted cat. Russell immediately appears, who tells Alistair that he can return here because he has settled the matter that he entrusted to him. He hands him the ring of the 7th demon emperor and asks him to accept it as gratitude. When asked what he is going to do next, the main character explains that they will go to the southern border and also find a celestial mirror in order to destroy the evil entity he recently met. I would really like to go with you. I need to take care of the Palace of Heavenly Purity. You are the new emperor of the mainland. The forces of the Venerable Summer have not yet returned to him, and you need to stay here and protect the domain from other emperors. The elders of the Ba'ath sect immediately offer their candidacies as assistants for the campaign to the southern border. Vanessa, the daughter of the head of the capital, also asks her father for permission to go on a trip, but she receives a strict refusal because it is very dangerous. After setting priorities, the main character hurries to go to the ship and check all the supplies before setting off tomorrow. At this time, Mrs. Alana asks Mistletoe why she doesn't want to go with the governor, to which she receives the answer that she already has a special task. The next morning, our heroes are seen off by the head of the capital, wishing them good luck on their travels, and to return unharmed. Alistair orders the elders to move in the intended direction, and he has some small business in the captain's cabin. Having opened his chambers, he asks whoever is hiding here to come out since he knows that someone is here. The elegant and stunning Vanessa immediately appears in front of him, and it is very interesting how he guessed that she was here. The head of the capital gave us a ship, but at that moment you were not next to him, and it was logical to assume that you would secretly want to get onto the ship. The girl says that she broke off her father-daughter relationship with him, and he agreed that Alistair would not be against what she decided to do. The main character presses her tender body to himself, clarifying what exactly she means, after which the girl begins to blush and feel embarrassed, saying that he himself understands everything perfectly. He takes her in his arms, saying that he does not dare not live up to the expectations of such a beauty, and carries her to bed as soon as possible in order to quickly move on to such a sweet process.